Hello, everyone. We have a small body today. I was waiting to see if more people coming. We're going to start the June 17th, 2024 committee meeting of the Fairfield RTM. Let's all stand for the pledge. All right, I'm switching the order just a little bit today. FairTV has a scheduled meeting at 8 o'clock, and they've asked to be moved up in time. Also, our ethics appointment, Mr. Ferguson, is a former member of FairTV recently and has agreed to help them with the transition. So I'm moving those two items to the front of the order. So we're going to start with Mr. Kraft, who I believe just got online. David, yep. If you unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to continue on the FairTV Commission, that would be wonderful.
Sure. I have this issue with WebEx where whenever I get on, the audio is very choppy. Can you hear me?
We can hear you nice and clear.
Oh, good. That's a rarity. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak for a moment. My name is David Kraft. I'm the commissioner of the FairTV Commission. I've been in this post for over a year now and on the commission for 3 years now, and have the honor to have my position come up for renewal. I've been dedicated to the mission of FairTV since well before I joined, and the idea of helping add both production quality and access to the town of Fairfield's meetings. I think we've made great strides over the last few years, namely in replacing longtime FairTV production manager Jerry Spino with Luke Altieri, who's been a wonderful addition. We finally, until it seems tonight, and the sad but exciting potential departure of Will Ferguson, we've had a full commission and really strive to always have 5 people present for our monthly meetings. So we're all remaining actively engaged, and I'd like to think I have a small part in that process. And I'm really just interested and hopeful to continue with the mission laid out before us.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Kraft? Representative Carson.
Hi, Laura Carson, and you have a very impressive resume. I just have one question. You listed in the form that you're from the Independent Party, but on our agenda it lists you as an unaffiliated. Are you a member of the Independent Party, or are you an unaffiliated voter?
I think this was an issue 2 years ago, actually, and unaffiliated. Am I correct, Mr. Kraft?
I'm so sorry, Laura. I think I heard most of what you're saying. Would you mind repeating it?
Yeah, Representative Carson's just said that on the form that you filled out, you listed yourself as an independent, but on our records, it's listing you as unaffiliated. And I said, I believe that there was that issue 2 years ago, if I recall correctly, and you're unaffiliated?
Yes, if I understand your question, I technically now am unaffiliated. I think you said on the form I filled out, I was listed as independent, and perhaps I did not fill that out correctly when asked to do so. But as of right now, and as of in the past few years, I remain unaffiliated and do not have any plans to change that. I hope I'm answering your question. I'm so sorry. It's hard to hear.
Thank you.
You did, thank you. It's just there is an independent party, and that's different than an unaffiliated.
Yes. I like to consider myself independent in nature, but that doesn't mean that I am part of the independent party. How's that for an answer, a quasi answer?
Thank you. If anyone else is having trouble listening online, just type it in the chat to let me know, and we can make some adjustments. Hopefully you hear this. Are there any other questions for Mr. Kraft? Representative Volk.
AJ Volk, District
Hi, Jim.
5. Hey, thanks for coming on and thanks for serving on Fair TV. I've been an advocate for Fair TV for a long, long time. Anyway, my question is, so how's the quorums doing? Are you having enough people showing up for meetings?
Yeah, I think the last time we had, I think there was one time either last August where we didn't have one. But candidly, we've never had an issue, even though we were down a member for the majority of the last year. But as I mentioned in my opening statement, Jay, I think we're very, everybody who is committed, because it's as simple as this. If you don't have the time to participate once a month, and of course, people have exceptions and last minute emergencies, then you shouldn't be serving on, in my view, on the Fair TV Commission or any other. And so I'm pleased to say that with the exception of one meeting, since certainly I was commissioner, we've always had a quorum, and usually usually we haven't even had an absentee.
That's great to hear. My other concern is there, I remember past years when you watched the meetings, it's clear on our TV screens, and now it seems like it's a little bit more muffled when the TV. Is that something that could be corrected?
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because my understanding, and I'm sorry, this is a matter I'll have to, we'll certainly revisit at our imminent next meeting, is that the quality actually has improved. Why it would be more muffled on Optimum, if I think I understand you correctly, than YouTube, would suggest to me that it is not an issue on our end. We've upgraded equipment significantly, but it's certainly worth us looking into, and I hope you just give us the chance to get you an appropriate answer.
Absolutely, and thank you very much, and appreciate you serving on the Fair TV committee.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Kraft? If you have any and you're online, just put your name in the chat to be recognized. Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Kraft. We appreciate your time on this, and good luck at your 8 o'clock meeting. Paula Kokoza, who is also being reappointed to Fair TV, unfortunately couldn't be here today, and I believe it might be her first meeting. She's missing a Fair TV since her appointment. She'll be here next week. And I'm going to move the presentation order. We're going to take William Ferguson next for the Ethics Commission appointment. He is a former member of Fair TV. He resigned on June 11th, but he's agreed to attend their meeting to help with transition as a member of the public. So Mr. Ferguson, I think I saw you online. If you want to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about why you want to make this change from Fair TV to ethics.
Yes, of course. Thank you. As David mentioned, bittersweet to step away from, what I think has been a really successful commission. And I think we've done quite a bit for Fair TV. And it's truly been a pleasure to serve alongside my fellow commissioners, and also Luke as our production manager, who's been not enough good things to be said about him. For me, opportunity to continue a life of public service. I, began that as an officer in the armed forces. And then obviously most recently as the secretary for the Fair TV Commission. And I think for me, it's an obsession with individual accountability, and collective justice has always been part of my driving passion there. And I think that those tenets being exemplified, first and foremost by those representing our residents, so that they can have continued faith in the integrity of their government is kind of the pinnacle of what we're all trying to accomplish for the folks who vote for some of us and trust in the appointments of others. So for me, this is, I think, a position that is as close to protecting the public interest as possible. And that's why I'm seeking this appointment. Obviously sad to step away from Fair TV. Like I said, quite enjoyed my time there. But I think this is something that I'm quite passionate about, and I think I'd be quite valuable to the town. So I appreciate the consideration and look forward to answering, obviously, any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Are there any questions for Mr. Ferguson? Again, if any member online, just type your name in the chat. Seeing none, thank you so much for your willingness to serve. Appreciate it. You're all set for tonight. Thank you. I'm looking here for our tax assessor, Mr. Ross Murray. I don't see you online. Give you a minute to correct me, but I don't believe so. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on for the presentation for the tax assessor's report, and we're gonna go on. We have Mary Hogue, who's online, and Bob Wall here from the Sustainable Fairfield Task Force to give us a little presentation. He's going to get the laptop that they have a little slideshow for us. Wrong one. This one's Fairfield Sustainable Task Force. You have early voting up there. That's the other one. We're just waiting for those. Oh, there they are. Great. So as I said, in person here, we have Mr. Bob Wall, and online we have Miss Mary Hogue to give us a little bit of an update on Sustainable Fairfield Task Force. I'm not sure who wants to go first. Oh, I'm sorry, you have to push the bottom of the microphone at all times, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to do a tag team. So we'll try to do it even though Mary is not in the room.
Great, welcome. Thank you.
So thanks to all for having Sustainable Fairfield here tonight. For those who are unfamiliar with us, we are an official town body appointed by the Board of Selectmen, and we provide support to the town for its practices and projects that can help Fairfield manage growth to safeguard the health of our environment, ensure reliability and economical use of our natural resources, and preserve the quality of life for our residents today and for the future. So here's a little, this doesn't seem to be advancing. Tech support. Let me just refresh it.
Sorry, with a little bit of tech support going on for those of you online.
Yeah, it was advancing on my screen, but not on yours.
Mary says, could we go into slideshow mode?
Yeah, I clicked it on here. WebEx is just taking a second here.
We love technology here.
Oh, there it goes.
Okay.
Oh, it's going for a second.
Should we do the clicker instead?
It's okay. Yeah, it's going.
But shouldn't it, that's not in presentation mode?
No. For some reason it doesn't like it in full screen. Let's see. Just get as much of this. I think it's as big as we could get it right now.
All right, so returning to the presentation, tried to kind of outline our,
Can you just talk a little bit more into the mic, I think Mary's saying?
I will try.
We're not on the right screen. We're not on the right screen on the
What's that?
slide. You're not on the right slide. We're on the third slide. We haven't gotten started yet. Did you finish the first 2 slides? Sorry, I
Yeah.
thought. Okay,
Yeah.
mine. I'm mute.
Okay. So we have up to 20 positions on our task force, and we've created committees, 4 of which are related to specific topics, and those include energy and built environment, food and waste, natural environment, and transportation. We also have 3 cross-cutting committees, including advocacy, communications, and equity. And we have made a conscious decision to reach out to various other committees and commissions in town that share some of the same subject matter. So we invite them to our meetings and get updates. So we're all working on the same page, hopefully. And these are just a few of our accomplishments from last year. Some of you may have attended the Earth Day celebration, which we do in tandem with the YMCA. And we also add a Drive Electric Earth Day. So that's always I should say it's usually a well-attended event. This year we happen to have the event during school vacation, so we lost some folks. But this past year, we've also updated and integrated diversity, equity, and inclusion into the sustainability plan that our committee has drafted and worked with town staff on. And that's posted on our website, which is within the town's website. We've worked with the Fairfield Public Schools and the PTA Green Teams to secure a grant from Sustainable CT, which helped cover the cost of food waste recycling, among other things. They also did an amazing pumpkin recycling drive, which spared tons of waste from going into the incinerator and saved a lot of money in the process. We've spearheaded efforts to implement new recycling programs such as glass. Typically, glass had been put in single stream, and it often breaks and gets contaminated and ruins whole batches of recycling matter. So by isolating it at the transfer station, we're able to not only repurpose it, but avoid the contamination that often occurs. We've also implemented a food waste recycling program there. We helped the town to obtain a federal grant with which they purchased a shelter structure that protects recycled materials from getting damaged by rain at the transfer station. And I'll talk about the next one in a minute, but we got a $10,000 grant from UI to promote energy efficiency for low-income households. We helped to coordinate updates of energy benchmarking with both the schools and the town buildings. And we've also helped to develop the town's first greenhouse gas inventory. And thanks to our crack communications team, we issue press releases, social media posts, and a bi-monthly newsletter covering a wide range of sustainability topics. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mary.
Hi. Yeah, I get the pleasure of spearheading for this wonderful group that I work with to get us certified, and by us, I mean the town, certified as a sustainable community. So Sustainable CT is a municipal certification program. It's for municipalities. We signed up the first year that they had it in 2018 and got the highest level, which was silver. It's a 3-year certification, so we got recertified again in 2021, and we're hopefully working towards recertification this year. And they now have a gold level certification. So the application is due August 20th. We have a lot of people on Sustainable Fairfield, as well as community members and students helping us do this. So, and of course, the municipal staff. So this is really a community effort. To get gold certification, as you can see on the slide, we have to have 4 equity, what they call toolkits, but 4 equity actions that have been implemented in the town, along with many other things related to equity. Equity is the first action out of 13 that they have in the program. And so we have to have an action in each category. We were climate leaders certified in 2022, the first year that they had that. We were only one of 5 in the entire state that got that certification. And we always work with other municipalities. But really, the point I think that I hope I'm making with this is that this shows what a leader is. Fairfield has been for a very, very long time. We're always actually ahead of what they're trying to do in sustainable CCT. Sometimes they ask us to do stuff that we did, maybe even decades ago. So it's really impressive, and I hope people in the town get to really appreciate how wonderful all the work is that the town does for sustainability.
Thank you.
And I mentioned the grant that we received from the Community Partnership Initiative. I said UI, but it's really part of Energize CT. And the purpose of this grant is to provide education and outreach to encourage home energy assessments and/or heat pump adoption among income eligible households. So this not only covers, people with incomes of a certain level, but also seniors on a fixed income. So we have 3 areas within town that are designated environmental justice areas. And our outreach is broad, so we've been attracting people that don't necessarily qualify for the income eligible level. But if they do qualify, then the assessment is free to them. Otherwise, there's a $75 copay. And there are a lot of incentives available, not only at the state level, but there's more coming under the Inflation Reduction Act. We've reached out to several organizations or entities in town to try to reach their constituents, among which are the Bigelow Senior Center, Operation Hope, local houses of worship, and thanks to Sharon Pastilli for one of those. And Fairfield Senior Advocates. We're trying to put together a legislative forum on energy efficiency together with FSA. And this would provide helpful information to people how they can save money on their energy bills. As you're well aware, the costs of both electricity and heating have gone up in recent years. So it's really taking a bite out of people with fixed incomes or lower incomes, and we're trying to address that. So our last item, I'm going to turn back over to Mary.
So this is something that just started. We just created a subcommittee under natural environment, which I'm chair of that committee. And it's our Health and Pollution Task Force, where we're looking into leaf blowers because we've gotten so many citizens reaching out to us, asking us to try to do something. So the first step, of course, at least I don't know if it's of course, but is to do research and outreach. We're going to be working with the libraries, Connecticut Audubon, anywhere that we can do presentations to people to get do listening sessions and to just create a dialogue. There's been talk of doing a survey. So we really just are trying to find out how to get in touch with people to get as much information from all sides. The issues noted by the citizens that prompted this are that there are many health hazards, there's damage to the landscapes, the toxic emissions, and the noise. On our sort of executive committee for this group, we have a neurologist, a public health doctor, and some other people, but our focus is truly trying to focus on the health issues. And we're looking at all the other communities that people have been telling us that have created some sort of notice of a limitation of some sort. In Connecticut, we've heard of Norwalk, Westport, and Greenwich. There are most towns in Westchester, and there are a lot of towns in New Jersey, but those are just local. There are a lot of towns throughout the country. And the bottom link, if you're interested in clicking on it, Bob, if you're the one doing this, is a top 10 reasons to limit use. Where are you? See you clicking. So I just want to make sure for you, so when you get this presentation and it gets online, that everyone can see this. I know
WebEx doesn't seem to be opening on my and
Doesn't,
right
it
now.
takes a while, I think they said.
Okay.
So we'll be sure to include that separately as a PDF too, we can get that out to everybody. Again, the focus is on health and understanding how it affects human health as well as the environmental health. We've been working with landscapers and talking to quite a few already, but of course we'd love to talk to more as well as homeowners. There seems to be different issues in terms of lifespan of equipment. We've been told for landscapers, gas-powered leaf blowers last 2 to 4 years because they use them all the time. That obviously would be different for homeowners. So we are just starting this out, and we're reacting to what the citizens are and different people are contacting us on to talk to us about.
Thank you. And I just want to comment, Mary made a couple comments in our comment chat that our members in person can't see. So she just commented that they recycled 18 tons of pumpkins. And you can sign up for Sustainable Fairfield bi-monthly newsletters, and to get in touch with them, www.sustainablefairfield.org. Are there any questions regarding any of this topic or presentation? Representative Cook-Littman.
Thank you, Mary and Bob, for being here and giving us such a great presentation. I'm just wondering, because we can't see the top 10 reasons to do something on gas leaf blowers, if you could just share your top 3 right now with the body, if that would be all right. I think everyone would really benefit from hearing some of the concerns that our constituents are having.
Okay. The number 1 is gas-powered leaf blowers are super polluters. A consumer-grade leaf blower emits more pollutants than 6,200-pound 2011 Ford F-150 Raptor, according to tests conducted by Edmunds in a renowned car magazine. The exhaust contains huge amounts of fine particulate matter, which is a carcinogenic. When we breathe particulate matter of 2.5 which is invisible. It can pass through our lung tissue into our bloodstream and is implicated in Alzheimer's and other diseases. The engines emit benzene, formaldehyde, and 1,3-butadiene, 3 of the 4 most carcinogenic compounds in the world, into the air where we inhale them as aerosols, or where they settle and contaminate our yards, waterways, and groundwater. So those are the top 3.
Thank you. Representative Pistilli.
Thank you. Sharon Pistilli, District 5. So I just wanted to send a shout out of thanks to Mary and to Bob. When I originally got involved in town, it was with the Earth Day Committee in 2004. And these guys, I think, were both involved then, which means that you've been walking the walk and talking the talk in Fairfield for more than 20 years. So I just wanted to say thank you for your dedication. And I have a few comments and then a question. I recycled my pumpkin at Jennings. I thought that was completely awesome. My understanding is that Greenwich has already implemented a leaf blower ordinance, and I followed it a little bit, but probably not as closely as I could. And I don't know if you guys have information on that you could share, just, anecdotally at this moment.
We have been studying other towns and their ordinances. Yes, Greenwich, Westport, and Norwalk have all passed ordinances. We're looking to see what works, what doesn't, what people are finding to be helpful to the citizens, and maybe what could be worded better. I would say that not to say anything good or bad about Greenwich and what they did, but we may take parts, but not all of what Greenwich did. I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Wackerman.
Karen Wackerman, District 9. Pretty much what Sharon said, but I just wanted to thank you both and the other folks who work with Sustainable Fairfield, because you're all volunteers and you do amazing work. And I get your newsletter and learn something every time I read it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's definitely a team effort for sure. But Jim Marin is our editor, and he does an amazing job on the newsletter.
Thank you. Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. I also want to throw in my 2 cents of saying thanks to the amazing advocacy of Bob and Mary and your whole team. Not only are you volunteers, but you're also experts. And I know that we rely on the work that you do to inform us. And so to that end, I had one sort of a request and another, well, I guess they're both requests. The first one is because we rely on you so much for your expertise, I just want to encourage you in terms of your advocacy that if there are ordinances in addition to what you're looking at for gas leaf blowers, I know that there are many of us on the body that would be very interested in hearing what your recommendations might be. So I would encourage you to do so. And then in terms of the gas leaf blowers, I appreciate my fellow representative Tara Cook-Littman for asking to read the top 3 because it's really disturbing. I am also interested though, in terms of the other ordinances, what sort of, I wouldn't say necessarily exceptions, but maybe phase-ins that they're recommending. My concern is that I know that landscaping sometimes is an option for folks in particular that, you know, that can be an economic opportunity for them that otherwise they wouldn't necessarily have available. Their health is obviously very important, as is ours, but I am concerned about that. And so would be really appreciative to know if something like that could be bundled maybe with an incentive program, or how can we make the transition cost effective, in particular for, you know, small businesses that are, you know, living hand to mouth through their landscaping. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be looking into all of that. We're trying to, you know, discern the best practices from our neighboring communities as well as in the tri-state area and elsewhere.
And I would just say that one of them is a phase-in. And as I said, we've been hearing from various landscapers how long their equipment lasts. So we would want to tie into that, you know, natural life cycle of their business.
Thank you. Representative Lebiksek.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to the Sustainable Fairfield. I just clarifying, and I think Michelle kind of spoke to this a little bit, but in terms of other ordinances or other, I guess, maybe equipment that would be considered, are leaf blowers more of a super polluter than other equipment used by landscapers, like the trimmers and the lawnmowers and that type of equipment?
I believe they are. I think, yeah, I'm not a mechanical expert, but I think the technology is a 2-stroke engine, and it's far more hazardous than, say, a conventional gas-powered lawnmower. So those have their own issues, but this is an extreme category.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding this topic? Okay, Representative Pistilli, I don't see anyone else's hand up.
Sharon Pistilli, District 5. I remember the other thing that I wanted to give a shout out to you guys for is I did participate in the food scrap program. Like, I recently bought a counter composter, but the food scrap program, if you don't know about it, if you buy compostable bags, you can put your food scraps in them and then bring them down to the transportation station, and there are toters there. And I was just wondering, like, how much food waste has been averted since inception on that, if you have any estimates.
We do try to track that data, but I don't have it at the top of my head now. We try to do that for all of the things we help to recycle, including the pumpkins and mattresses and everything else. So we can provide a report subsequently to the RTM.
That will be in our sustainable CT application. So we'll know that
Thank you.
soon.
Yeah, and I just wanted to tell the public about it. So this is your free public service announcement. Thank you.
And speaking of PSAs, I just wanted to invite anyone, if any of your constituents have concerns about energy costs, please spread the word, let them know that there are a lot of incentives, and they can get a free assessment if they qualify, or a low cost assessment otherwise, and it will save everybody significant money. We can also help them to change their supplier, which recently could save like on $43 a month, you know, compared to the default rate offered by UI.
Thank you. I want to say I just had a new constituent move to the neighborhood, and they use the $75 energy cost, and they say that it saves them tons of money. They gave them recommendations for rebates that they could get, and they were really able to do some needed upgrades to get their house more energy and efficient and cost effective. And I have it on my list of things to do. So I appreciate that, and we appreciate everything you guys do. I don't think there's any more questions, but thank you so much for coming before us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to go back to Mr. Murray. We have him here today for two things, but first on the agenda was to give us a report on senior disabled tax relief. Ross Murray is our tax assessor. Welcome. You have to push the bottom the whole time.
Good evening. So we wrapped up the elderly program on May 15th, and we took in 479 applications, 92 of which were brand new. Overall, the program is down almost $400,000 in cost for fiscal year 25. And that's a decrease of 73, net decrease of 73 applicants on the program. Currently, we've got 5 people on extension that we're waiting to wrap up their applications on. And any questions?
Are there any questions for our tax assessor on the senior disabled tax relief program from this year? Representative Estrada.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astrida, District 1. Is the reduction in expense strictly related to the reduction in applications, I would assume?
Yes.
Thank you. Representative Wackerman.
Karen Wackerman, District 9. To what do you attribute the reduction in applications, do you think? Do you have any idea?
Yeah. So there was 165 accounts that were removed from the program overall. 95 of those were either from the applicant passing away or selling their home. And that's about 58% of the total. And then there was another 36 that just failed to refile. And we send out an initial letter at the beginning of February to remind everyone that's due in, and then we follow that up in April with a second letter. So that's the primary reason.
Thank you.
3.
Thank you. Representative Carson? No? Okay. Representative Barahona.
Representative Barahona, District 6. Just to follow up to Representative Wackerman's question, can you talk about the year over year? Is that typical for a year, this, reduction? Can you give a little bit of a historical perspective?
Yeah, that's down a little bit. On the back side of that report is about a 5-year history of the program. So that is better than we've been, not as good as we were in COVID. But during COVID, people didn't have to reapply. They were automatically rolled over from a governor's executive order. So I think right now we're starting to really normalize again. So last year we had 211. We were down 211. The year before it was 241. In 2022 it was 45, and prior to that 240 and 187. So it's kind of back to the norm.
Thank you. Representative Horton.
Hi, Margaret Horton, District 10. I don't know that there's any way that we would have this data, but of the people that had moved out of the town of Fairfield, is there any way to know if, the reasons for their moving? I guess I'm curious about the, affordability and if more tax relief would have actually helped them to stay in town.
No. Once we don't know, they move until the sale comes through.
Thank you. Any other questions? Again, any representatives in the chat that want to put their name in the chat? Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Josh Garskoff, District 5. And forgive me, Mr. Murray, if I missed this in the report. Is there any change in the percent of applicants approved over time?
I haven't tracked percent approved. So I don't know if I can answer that. It's a little difficult because there's a lot of situations where people will call up, ask the parameters of the program, and then never really apply. So is that a denial, or, you just, they never show up? Sometimes they're at the counter and they ask the question and then just leave. So we don't, that percentage really isn't a good number because we don't know the population that just never apply.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this? All right, seeing none, Mr. Murray, do you mind staying a little bit and returning to us when we go over our ordinance updates for senior disabled tax relief in a few minutes?
Sure.
All right, great. I'll call you back up then. I think Mr. Diaz is having a little trouble signing on, so I'm going to call up Mr. Barnhart right now. Since he's here, our Director of Community and Economic Development, and first to talk to us about the Neighborhood Assistance Act program application. Welcome.
Good evening, Mark Barnhart, Director of Community Economic Development. The first item concerns the Neighborhood Assistance Act program. For those unfamiliar with the program, it is a state program that provides a tax credit to businesses that make a charitable contribution to municipal programs or nonprofit programs that have been endorsed by the community. Our obligation, there are no town funds involved. Our obligation is to solicit applications from municipal agencies and nonprofit groups to vet them through a public hearing process and through the action of this body, submit them to the Department of Revenue Services for their consideration by the July 1st deadline, and to appoint a municipal liaison, which traditionally has been my office has fulfilled that role. We did get 3 applications, all of which comply with the program. Many of these organizations you're probably familiar with. The programs have been approved previously for consideration and have received charitable contribution from businesses. It's really a win-win opportunity that provides some additional monies to help these nonprofits fulfill their obligations and serve the public, maintain their facilities, and in return, the state does provide that tax credit for businesses that to lower their tax liability or obligation. So happy to take any questions at this time.
Are there any questions for Mr. Barnhart regarding the neighborhood assistance? Oh, Representative Estorita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. Mark, question for you. How, and I don't understand the tax code, so if this is a stupid question, just tell me, but how would the tax credit to the business be different from the deduction that they would take as like a normal charitable contribution? I guess I'm not understanding what the difference is for a program like this.
That makes 2 of us in terms of not understanding the tax code, but I'll try my best. My understanding is only corporations that have a corporate tax liability, income tax liability, are eligible for this. So it is a credit like other credits. I believe the state does provide that business could avail themselves of. It just does provide an opportunity for them to claim the credit to provide a charitable gift to these organizations. I don't know how it really differs from anything else they might take advantage of, but it has been a successful program that they've run for many years.
So like a sole proprietorship or a partnership would not be eligible?
Correct. It just has to be a C Corp, S Corp, that type of thing.
Okay.
So the businesses that traditionally take advantage of this are Southern Connecticut Gas, Santa Fuel, Bigelow Tea. These are all companies that have invested in programs offered by Fairfield nonprofits, for example.
Now, in terms of, like you said, the approved programs, are these programs that the town has approved or the state has approved? How does that work exactly?
Yeah, our role is to solicit these applications as long as they're within one of the eligible categories. We approve them through action of this body, the Board of Selectmen, prior to the RTM consideration. The Department of Revenue Services, which has the last say, also has to approve them as eligible for participation in this program. So it's a two-step process.
So of the three programs that you selected, am I assuming correctly that basically like all the work that they would be doing is directed towards Fairfield?
The three organizations the three programs, there's two organizations, three programs applied through Fairfield, but pretty much 3/4 of the municipalities in the state of Connecticut now participate in the program, and organizations like these are also applying through them. It doesn't prevent an organization from applying through multiple municipalities if they want to either. So I don't know that's the case with Wakeman, FTC, for example. But certainly I am aware in past years that we've had applications from groups that are headquartered elsewhere, but also provide services to Fairfield residents, and we've approved them for consideration here.
So like Awakeman's aside, because I'm assuming that any grants that they would get would obviously all be spent and directed locally here. But for these other organizations that are applying potentially through multiple municipalities, would they get, like $10,000 from Fairfield, $10,000 from Westport, $10,000 from Norwalk? How does that work? Or are they just trying to get $10,000 and they figure the more people that apply on their behalf, the better chance they have of getting it?
So there are no town funds involved, so they're not
Right.
getting any money directly from you or from Westport or anything
Right.
like. I don't know the rationale behind it. I frankly don't understand, other than perhaps they might think that by applying through multiple municipalities, that might expand the awareness of their program and increase their odds to get charitable gifts from businesses that might be based elsewhere. So Bigelow, for example, does place credits not just in Fairfield, but in other parts of the state as well. I suspect that Southern Connecticut and some of the other businesses do as well. But perhaps there are those that have a very parochial interest and are more likely to invest in a nonprofit or municipal agency based in their community. And so by applying through multiple municipalities, maybe they increase the odds of getting more charitable contributions that way.
So,
But I don't really know.
yeah, my last question. So then if somebody like a Bigelow, for example, if they apply through us and they are awarded however much they're awarded, is there any obligation on their behalf to spend a certain amount, like within Fairfield or directed to Fairfield? How does that work?
The municipal or nonprofit agencies that are applying, they can only use the funds for these purposes that have been approved. The business makes the contribution not through us, but directly to the eligible nonprofit or municipal agency. And then they have to apply separately to the Department of Revenue Services to receive the tax credit. So once we do the initial vetting and approve the list, our obligations essentially cease.
Okay.
It's really then it's between the state and the company.
I got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding this item? Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. Hey, Mark. Is the Fairfield Housing Corporation an eligible entity?
As far as I know, they could apply, yes. And we do solicit, we make aware all the nonprofits, municipal agencies. We have a mailing list of over 150 organizations that we send out to, and individuals who've requested information in the past.
And can the funds that come from this program, can it, for example, go into the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust? Or does it have to be like for a specific purchase, development, et cetera?
Affordable housing is an eligible category. I don't know if it could be invested into a fund without going for a direct purpose. I'd have to look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Representative Barahona.
Hi, Mark, represent Barahona District 6. So you said there was a list of about 150 eligible nonprofits and only 3 applied? I might not be reading it right. And is it rolling or is it a deadline and that's it?
It's a deadline because the Department of Revenue Services set the deadline. They have to apply, or we have to complete our process, our vetting, including having a public hearing and submitting the list to them for their consideration by July 1st. So we do send out as soon as we get notice of the program's continuation and the fact that the state is now soliciting applications, we notify those who have on our mailing list. It's not 150 organizations, it's 150 or so people on our mailing list. And traditionally we get between 6, somewhere between as low as 3 to as many as 9 applications, but not all receive funding. So while it's a fairly easy application to submit, it doesn't mean that they're going to get any funding. They're really to increase their odds. They would need to do some additional outreach and solicitation to businesses with whom they might have a relationship. And that would help increase their odds of actually receiving a charitable gift from a business that was looking for a tax credit to reduce their tax liability. But once we complete our work, we'll make that information available upon request, but we're not out, shopping it around for them.
So is it the business that is going to give a contribution that might make the process onerous for a nonprofit? Does every business have their own? It sounds like your process is fairly simple. I'm just, as a CEO of a nonprofit, flabbergasted that only 3, knowing how strapped nonprofits are. So I'm trying to understand, most nonprofits don't apply because it's not worth their time or whatever. So I'm just trying to understand where in the process it could be problematic.
I don't think it's a particularly onerous application process, but I don't think it's particularly, there are probably other avenues that are more likely to produce income than this one. So in order for it to really work, I think from my perspective, the nonprofit would have to have some relationship with a business organization that also has a corporate tax liability that they're looking to reduce. Clearly, you can look at the list and see who has participated in the program before and do outreach to them. But if you don't have a relationship of some sort, I don't know that your chances would be very high.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, Community Development Block Grant. Mr. Barnhart's going to give us an update regarding that.
I'm back. So this is, again, is an annual program. The town is a recipient of federal funds under the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is administered by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We've been a participant for many years. We're now in program year 50. This coincides with the federal fiscal year that runs from October 1 through September 30th of each year. This program is intended to provide decent housing, a suitable living environment, expanded economic opportunities, primarily for persons of low to moderate income. There are a lot of different activities that are eligible for consideration with these federal dollars, but it does need to meet a national objective. And the national objective, there are 3. The one that most often applies in the case of Fairfield is that we're providing a service to areas or persons of low to moderate income. We do have to make sure it's consistent with our 5-year consolidated plan or annual action plan. It's not ineligible for funding. There is some level of flexibility in terms of we allocate the dollars to meet housing community development needs, but we can only allocate up to 15% of our grant towards so-called public service activities and another 20% to cover our administrative cost. We are expecting to receive next year a slight decrease over the current year. The total grant is $479,237, which is a slight reduction of about 2.7% over the current year. In order to keep the funding relatively level, we are able to program income dollars, which is repayment of loans that we have made over the years. Some of the programs we provide using these funds are our first-time home buyer and housing rehabilitation program, which are traditionally in the form of a no-interest loan that's ultimately repaid when the owner goes to sell or refinance the property, and that becomes program income that we can then lend out again to serve other needy households. So that's pretty much it. The allocation plan, we did go through the required public hearing. The allocation plan in terms of the public service agencies are essentially unchanged. We did not fund any organization that requested dollars. And essentially the funding is pretty much level from the prior year. And you'll see most of the other non-public service related activities or for affordable housing, which includes our home ownership, handyman, and rehab programs that are administered through our office, and then some money that we set aside for community development needs, including small business development, street and sidewalk improvements in concert with Public Works. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding this item? Representative Pistilli.
Yeah, hi, Mark, Sharon Pistilli, District 5. So I had a question on the affordable housing activities and then also on the human services rental assistance. So in those cases, is the demand about equally paired with the amount of the block grants, or is the demand higher? And then how do we prioritize like how those funds are allocated?
So usually it varies from year to year in terms of our housing activities. Some years we have a lot of robust activity for first-time homebuyer assistance or rehab programs, not so much in other areas. Kind of flip-flops back and forth depending on other market conditions. We do have the ability to move money around if one program is particularly has a lot of activity in one year and not so much in other areas. That has happened in the past. We do need to notice those changes so the public has an opportunity to comment on them. Our handyman program is pretty much consistent. We do a program about $16,000 each year, and we exhaust those funds. And that's for very minor repairs to very low income seniors. We pay the cost of up to 8 hours of labor. If there's any material cost, it's typically paid by the homeowner, but you need to be a very low income person to qualify. Most of those are seniors living on fixed incomes. But the rehab and home ownership program depends on market conditions. I suspect that with rental assistance, knowing the market the way I do, we could probably put a lot more dollars into that. There are other programs that do provide rental assistance to folks. But, it's an ongoing need. So, we are limited in terms of the dollars we allocate in that category to 15%. So if one public service activity was not spending the allocation, we could allocate additional funds, but otherwise we'd have to probably take money from another source to do that.
Okay, great, thanks. And then on the handyman allocation, do we also have partnerships with I don't know why LifeBridge is popping into my head, but I don't know that that's the right charity, is it? But like Habitat for Humanity, stuff like that. Like, do we match?
It's not Habitat, but there is another faith-based organization that does more extensive repairs to homes, especially for lower income folks. And we've worked with, it's the Westbridge Coalition. We've done work with them in the past if we find a particular needy case. They are limited in terms of the volunteer labor hours and the number of projects they can accept, but we work with other organizations to maximize our impact as much as possible.
Okay, so like if we run out of handyman funds or to preserve handyman funds, we'll try to find someone else who would.
We will try to find a way to help that individual, yes.
All right, great, thank you.
Any other questions regarding this item? Thank you, Mr. Barnhart. Appreciate you coming out. I'm going to go back on the agenda. I see Will Diaz has made it online. So I'm going to have Will, welcome back to the RTM. I'm just going to have you come online and unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about why you want to continue to serve on the Ethics Commission.
Hi, everyone. My name is Will Diaz. Been a Fairfield resident for about 24 years. I was on the RTM for a little bit and was appointed to the Ethics Commission a couple of years ago. And we've been working feverishly over the last year, a little bit more than I expected. But it's really a pleasure for me to be part of an organization within the government that sort of I guess polices the ethics of what's going on in the town, and I'm glad we have this position on the commission. I've enjoyed my work with the individuals that I've been working with on the commission, and you know, it's part of my background. I teach out of the School of Social Work at UConn, and one of the elements of what I teach is ethics. So it's something that that is near and dear to me, and I believe we need to have accountability and checks and balances within our government to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the people. So I intend to carry that out for the next couple of years on the commission, and I hope for your support.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Representative Carson.
Laura Carson, District 4. Hi, Will. How you doing? Thank you for your service and continuing your service. I'd watched the Board of Selectmen meeting. Is the reason that you've been working feverishly is because the hotline for the whistleblower is now goes directly to you, to the ethics?
It could be. I can't say for sure, but it's definitely, I think it helps to have to not necessarily have a gatekeeper there to kind of say whether things are worthy of our time or not. I think that we should be able to decide that, and I'm glad that we do have a direct line to the public.
Thank you very much again.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Question for Mr. Diaz. Representative Barahona.
Representative Arahona, District 6. Hi, Will. I said it last time when you came to this body after I was appointed your replacement. I'll just say it again, that there are few other people I can think of that are as qualified to sit on this body as you are. I've known Will since he was a PTA member at McKinley, one of the few fathers at the time on the PTA, and he is a man of great ethics himself and a wonderful person, and the town should be proud to have your service, and I appreciate your willingness to serve another term. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jen.
Thank you. Representative Zezima.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Liz Zezima, District 4. Will, I'm a big fan, have been for years, really appreciate your service, but honestly, you're just an unimpeachable, good character. You're the perfect person for this body, and I really appreciate that you want to come back and serve again. I just feel better knowing people like you are sitting in that position. And again, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for those comments. Appreciate it. Appreciate you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for coming back, Will. We miss you on the RTM, but we think you're in a good spot. So thank you for coming. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to the employees' retirement plan changes. Online, we have our HR Director, Kathleen Simpson, and in the public, here we have Carolyn Trabucco from the Joint Retirement Investment Board here to give us an update on the requested changes.
Oh, hello, everyone. It's Kathleen Simpson, HR Director, but I think I'll give it to Carolyn because she does has a really good, she's been living it with Megan Brandt, our benefits manager, who could not unfortunately be here tonight. So I think if Carolyn, if you don't mind, I'm going to give it to you to start.
Not at all. I'm
Okay,
ready. For those of you who didn't enjoy your reading assignment,
This refers to pages 34 to 108 in your packet, so I do apologize for that. Maybe I can, hello from the JRIB, where we do the most exciting stuff in town, as you can tell is evidenced from this. If I might give you a little background of why you were reading what you were reading and what this is, what's afoot. 2 years ago, the JRIB voted unanimously to outsource aspects of its of our town's pension administrations to Milliman. Milliman is our actuary. Milliman also does a phenomenal job at administration. This is not a substitute for the benefits department. This is rather things like, this is all about providing a better service to our plan participants, our pensioners, or beneficiaries. Things like, you want to change your address. You want to see updates to your plan or your COLA adjustments, or maybe you just want to see your balance online. That's what this was about. It's also about providing better tracking and analytical tools for the JRIB and our OCIO, which is our outsourced chief investment officer. We will be able to receive more timely actuarial analyses, better experience studies, better cost analyses, things that provide the elements of better governance. The pensions, if you recall from when I come in, the pensions at OPEB together are about $500 million. This is not a small amount of money. This represents a lot of people. This is a very large endeavor, and we should do everything within our care to provide the best governance that we can for it. This is not a cost the town is taking on. The pensions have a nice funding level. This is something that the pensions are funding. So that's why you're here. That's the process. 2 years ago, we voted to do this. Lifting and freeing 50 years of data from filing cabinets takes a really long time, and doesn't come without some challenges. The work of lifting that data finished back in, say, January, and then work began to update the plan document. The plan document that you got here, which was the first that you saw, was written 36 years ago. That was the current document that we had. That document was written before the full adoption of the Tax Reform Act of 1986. For those of us who are old enough in the room to remember that, everything changed with the Tax Reform Act of 1986, right? Milliman wouldn't accept the liabilities responsible for taking on a plan that was based on this document. We then had to do a full stop. We then had to write new plan documents to update them for not just 36 years of time gone by, but 16 federal acts, massive amounts of pension law updates, and an untold number of IRS code updates. It's a really heavy lift. The plan was ready. The document that you see before you is a lot thicker than the one that came before it for obvious reasons. It had to update for new definitions, for new terms. It's a comprehensive piece of work from a let's catch you up from the federal acts, pension laws, IRS codes perspective. It's a good baseline guiding document. It also comes with a Rosetta Stone that came in your piece, and that kind of gives you a sense by section of where there are new definitions, where something was updated. Okay, let me tell you what it is not. It's not the end all be all. It's an open, and it is supposed to be a document that will be frequently amended. I think it becomes easier to amend something that's in digital form than something that has been living kind of in a filing cabinet for a long time. And we expect it to be updated. It will be ingested into the Milliman system. We'll be able to see the rules that are in it, and it will be easy to update going forward. Importantly, as I'm sure you noted in the third paragraph and all throughout it, any collective bargaining agreement supersedes this document. It's a really important point. So this is a document that is meant to be superseded.
right, during bargaining times. So it can, it should, and it will be amended. It passed the Employees Retirement Board. If you recall, the JRIB is two parts. There's police and fire pension, and there's the Employees Retirement Board. It passed our board on June 5th by unanimous vote. We have 3 union reps on our board. We intentionally held off voting on it to give the town the collective bargaining units 2 full months to see it, review it, compare it, live with it, ask questions, offer feedback. We set that a deadline on that of June 3rd. We voted on this on June 5th, right? We've waited 2 years. We've done our work. It's time. We have to move forward. One amendment that's not reflected in your document, I'm sure when you read it, you thought, oh, this one thing is missing. So let me tell you, totally this one thing was missing. And I have to compliment and I have to shout out Chris Brand, who's a union rep, who's on our board, who kind of pointed it out. That the one thing that we don't have is in the appendix is an exhibit dedicated to our members who are pension plan participants who are not covered by a collective bargaining agreement. Right? So if the plan can be superseded by a collective bargaining agreement, what happens if you're a plan participant, but you're not part of a collective bargaining agreement? That's not in the plan, that's not in here, right? And so we voted for an exhibit, an amendment, and a page that will be dedicated to definitions solely for plan participants not covered by collective bargaining agreements. I thought it was a great suggestion. We're working on that ad, and that will be kind of a living document, if you will, and that will be incorporated by vote in an upcoming JRIB meeting. So in conclusion, it seems like you've got a wacky language into here to vote, so I'm not even going to tell you like how to vote, whatever. I'm just asking you, please enable us to move along this incredibly long journey toward modernizing the plan, providing us the better steering tools, improving the services, and really giving us a chance to have better oversight of the JRIB with your vote. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. I just have a couple of comments. First, the reason, if you look at the wording on the item, it says that we would vote yes to reject it. So if everything that was in our backup wasn't confusing enough, if you want to reject this item next week, you will vote yes. If you want this to pass, you will vote no. It's just part of we have 60 days as a body to reject this, is the way the wording is. So if we didn't put it on our agenda, it would get passed if we didn't vote on it within 60 days or vote against it. So we're voting to reject it next week. Just know that when you're voting. I also want to say that an RTM member asked me, does any of that make sense to you? And I said, don't worry, Carolyn Trabucco will be there and she'll explain it to us. So are there any questions? Representative Pastilli.
All right, so Sharon Pastilli, District 5. I just want to say that I'm not as smart and I don't know as much about this without Bill, but on the body with us. But anyway, sorry, I'm just making fun. Were there any financial implications with the plan document being non-compliant with the tax code update of 1986 and all of the other amendments since then?
Nope, because we've been performing in compliance. The only thing not compliant was the piece of
the plan
paper.
document. Okay. And then what's best practice going forward, and what is our plan going forward in terms of refreshing the plan document?
That's a great question. I will commit to you that it will be updated certainly something sooner than 36 years from now. Sure. You know, it's interesting, a plan document, we did ask the folks at Milliman that, how often do you come back and update the plan document? And it's probably something that comes up every 5 years.
Okay.
Right? If you do your investment management document on the investments every 2 years, you would look at your plan document, say every 5 years.
So we'll keep the effective date in the footer so that we know It'll be on the footer in the bottom, something,
I
we
think that's a
know?
great idea.
Yes, and then do they provide us with like a trends piece every year so that if there is big change in legislation somehow, that the trends piece would trigger us to know that there's an update to the plan document sometime before the 5 years is up?
Yes, Milliman does do that.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Representative Estrada, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've figured it out, but I just want to make absolutely clear. So by voting no on item number 10, I am voting to approve the new plan document you have put together.
Yes, you're supporting the document that they've put together by voting no next week.
I'm a simple man and I just
Like
need
that.
simple
So
answers.
vote
Thank you.
no to speed me on my way.
If you support the changes, vote no. Any other questions? Representative Pistilli has, oh wait, I'm sorry, Representative Shea.
Thank you very much for your excellent recap of those documents. Very helpful. So just for my clarification, so Milliman has a contract with the pension fund, and how long is that in place?
So the contracts are annual. We renew them annually. But the goal would be to continue on with them. We've been working with them for 2 years at this point to get to the starting blocks. But like an actuary or an auditor, there are competitors out there. So once you're up and running, if you wanted to, like an actuary or an auditor, you can do an RFP. You could then move the business over. I think this has really been a hard lift.
Thank you. And just another question on the collective bargaining. So there are a number of unions that are participants in this pension fund, and they all have their own collective bargaining agreements. And I guess I'm just curious how that works when one collective bargaining agreement is different from another one within the same fund.
Oh, so there's a short answer for that. And then there's a long answer for that. And Kathleen might, and then there's an HR answer. And Kathleen has her hand raised back here. So I'm going to let her answer from the town perspective. From an investment perspective, the JRIB, the funds are managed pari passu, right? And so it really is irrelevant from the investment oversight. How, the pension rules are part of the relationship between the town and the bargaining units. But the investment funds, the money is managed in accordance to the investment policy statement that is overseen by the JRIB with the chief investment officer. But I'm going to let Kathleen jump in here.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Carolyn. That's a very good question about the collective bargaining agreements. So every time we go into negotiations, some of the things might be pension. We're also mindful of keeping things consistent. And this is exactly what we want to do with making rules that are consistent with process and procedures, because if you have a lot of different rules for different unions, it gets confusing and hard to manage. So we've been trying to, with our union partners who have been great through this process, working on things to ensure consistency. And as much as we can, we want to work in the town's best interest, of course, with pension and with benefits. I just want to say why my hand was up too, because I really needed to say Megan Brandt, our benefits manager, has done yeoman's work since she's gotten here about 2 years ago to get this through and so many other things with our benefits and pension. So this has been, and Carolyn can say too, a long haul, and working together with our partnership with the union and with the pension board. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I
do need to echo that. Megan Brand has been extraordinary in benefits. I mean, this is as big a lift as as there is. And this has been a collective effort. This really has been a long slog. And she's been at it every day. And she's done a really nice job with it, and very sensitive to any concerns that have come up. So really, we've been very fortunate to have her in place.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions other than Representative Pistilli? Go ahead, Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Josh Garskoff, District 5. Mrs. Trabucco, I think last time you were here, you were telling us about a search for a new OCIO. Can you give us just a quick update on where we are at with that, please?
I would be very happy to tell you about that. We did it. We made it. We made the deadline. For those who don't remember the drama of the JRIB, if this wasn't exciting enough, the OCIO we had, Vanguard, exited the business of OCIOs to the municipal pension plans. So they effectively fired us in December and gave us a short period of time to find a new guy, a new person. We ran a tight, fast, thorough, really good RFP process. We, through that process, selected BlackRock. We just completed and signed the documents. What day is today? Today's Monday. We did that on Friday or Thursday of last week. Signed the documents. We'll sign the rest of the documents this week, and the assets should be transferred over middle of next week. And so we won't be out of the market, and we will have kind of moved everything over.
Thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Pistilli.
Sorry, I forgot. I had more questions. Sharon Pistilli, District 5. I'm also taking a little short trip down memory lane, but it's a little longer trip down memory lane than Josh. So 2 years ago, we had an issue where we're using actuarial tables that didn't have municipal employees living as long, and then the actuarial tables were updated, and then our liabilities were not updated to reflect that we have to fund pensions for longer lifetimes. And so I was just wondering, what kind of processes we have in place to keep something like that from happening again, and like how often the actuarial tables are updated, like how often we go back to the well for that data, or how often it's available.
Yeah, so that series of data, those mortality pub tables, those pub tables that included the lives of public sector employees. So surprise, surprise, public sector employees live on average between 3 and 7 years longer than private sector employees. With, teachers living a lot longer and firefighters living a little bit longer. And that was the third year that mortality table had been available. So we adopted it in year 3, which was considered best practice. So we adopted it first opportunity came around for us to adopt it. We've made a point, at least with me, with the board that I've chaired, to make sure we're always adopting the most updated set of actuarial numbers that we can. Because the most important thing we can do for the town and for the pensioners and for ourselves is to have the most accurate set of numbers, right? Because we effectively deliver to the town a liability, right? And it's up to the town then to figure out how you want to fund the liability. But I've got to characterize the liability as accurately as possible. And that means adopting the most accurate set of numbers that we can get to. The most accurate set of data, of course, is going to be our own. And the way we do that is with an experience study. We are undertaking an experience study now. That's something that Milliman does. They're our actuary too, right? 2 sides of their house. They're doing that now. It becomes easier for us to do experience studies with them when we have all of these services under wraps.
When we have records.
And when we have records. So we'll be better. That's what I mean. Like the tracking will become quicker, easier. We'll be able to see what we're doing rather than have to kind of mathematically, kind of infer. And so we're driving toward it.
So we can build our own model rather than having to use like a generic.
Yeah, but you're still going to use statistical tables because I still can't accurately tell you when you're going to pass away.
Okay, thank you. So can we talk about something happier?
You guys love me, man. I give you great reading. I tell you about great stuff. Come on. Pension's fun.
I mean, I was just talking about the tables, not the rest of it.
Are there any other questions regarding this item?
You guys, I can't make it next week, so this is it. This is your question time.
Well, if they have any, we'll just send them your guys' way. So thank you very much again for coming. We always enjoy your time here. And thank you, Ms. Simpson online.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you
Moving
very
on
much.
to the Rooster River flood mitigation bonding, we have our interim CFO here, David Becker. Give us a little update.
Thanks for having me. Tough act to follow. Something we've been talking around for a little while, not as long, but Rooster River. The main thing that we're looking to do here with this item is update you that somewhat as predicted, the Army Corps of Engineers is still going through a lengthy process that we're probably not going to exit until sometime in the fall or early winter, with the concerns of the ARPA funds and making sure that we don't put them at risk. We'd like to just transfer the method that this is going to be paid for into a bond for 2.5 million. So taking it out of ARPA, which is now sitting at the 2.5 million level, and just transferring the payment method for now to bonding. We do anticipate that this will enable us to at least continue down on some of the early stage work and design and planning, along with some other grant funds that we have. But at some point, we'll have to come back once we've got the bulk of the work costed and phased out post the Army Corps review and some other design work, and ask for some additional funds. So this isn't the last time you've heard of Rooster River, but we do want to make sure that the public and all the boards and everybody involved knows that the funding is still secure. I think that was a big message that had come out of the last discussion of it. So it's really just an even swap transferring it. One thing that you'll notice is it's listed at 5.75 million, but the actual bonded amount is 2.5. And that's a technical cleanup item in that there's an MOU with Bridgeport for $750,000 that's existed for a few years. And one of the items with that is, as we're now working towards expending against that we have to actually technically appropriate the funds in order to actually dip into that piece. And the same, there was a grant for 2.5 million that had come earlier this year, around late winter. I think it was the February or the March window. It's a state grant for 2.5 million. We did all the acceptances in it. There was some language that attempted to appropriate it, but in reality, the bond council felt that since we were coming here for this, let's clean up the wording to make sure it's very clear that we're actually having the bodies appropriated. And that is oftentimes done in bonding resolutions. You'll notice whenever there's grants or other sort of takedowns that come in this, that you approve the top line in the bond resolution, and then you chip away after that. So even the Bridgeport piece that isn't technically a grant, it can be done through the bonding appropriation in that language. So that's why you see the larger number, but in reality, it's approving 2.5 million to move from ARPA to bonding.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Becker regarding this item? Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Josh Garskoff, District 5. And I realize I'm not asking a bond question, but you brought up this status of things with the Army Corps. Are all of the various elements of the Rooster River project now proposed and in the permitting process? Or are there some, at a recent check, there was some that were still, I think, not put forth yet for permitting. Do you happen to know the status of that?
So I can only go so far in the nuances of it, but there are some deep items and you know, there's certain pieces that will still unfold with this. You have to remember that there was actually originally discussed essentially a 4-phase project. So most of what we've been talking about is phase 1 and phase 2. So some of the items in 3 and 4, which we sort of now blended it to say that if we need to do something that used to be in 3, if we want to do, you know, if we could do it sooner, we're gonna do it. But some of those additional pieces are still gonna need some different elements. The biggest piece, the Army Corps piece, you know, being the one that obviously is taking the longest and is the most complex. But some of the deep pieces are expected not to be as complicated to do.
And I think, thank you. And I think the Owen Fish school, the ball field, was one of the ones I think that had not moved forward yet. Is that still the case?
I can get you an answer on that one.
I see our first selectman nodding in the back. Yeah.
Great, yeah.
Thank you.
I believe.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? Representative Wolk.
Representative Walk, District 5. Hi, David. I just have a quick, what I heard, this has been going on for such a long time, but it's in fruition and I know it's going to happen and I know we're going to alleviate a lot of the flooding. We're not going to stop it completely, but I know, like Bill Hurley said, we're going to alleviate a lot of it. So I heard that, part of the reason why the Army Corps of Engineers have held, it's been holding up the project is because they wanted to make, I'm just asking if I heard this correctly, they wanted to make Tungus Hill Park a retention center and they didn't want it a park anymore. Was that it, or was I completely confused? I'm confused. I'm confused, Bill, right?
First Selectman Gerber, do you want to come on up and answer that? He looks like he has answers.
Early on, Jay, you're right. And that's what held it up in the initial many months, was that they came back and said that that area would make more sense as a detention area. And everyone rallied to let them know, no, this is an essential park. And so that was taken off the table.
Thanks, Bill. So what's actually holding?
But it did waste a lot. So it wasted some time.
A lot of time that we could have used the 2 million for the ARPA funds. We didn't have to worry about the time. But anyway, so it's past history. So what's holding everything? What actually are they? This is a crazy question.
Yeah, I'll take the first crack at it. I mean,
Thanks, Dave.
part of the problem from the Army Corps perspective is also just been that they've bounced it around with different people. So one of the person who's reviewing it now, as I understand it, had actually been on the project almost a year ago, right? So, but every time that they move it to a different person, they have to, review where everything's at, right, and start over. And the other piece is there's a number of different waiting periods after each step, and so it purely takes time. So, again, it's moving, and this is obviously a priority, and everybody, this is one of the top project and priorities that's consistently been, on the forefront with everybody. But you've got to follow the process and the permitting piece. So our biggest focus with this is to ensure that the funding's there and we're ready to go. And I would say that. Engineering, Bill Hurley and the team and the town is focused on if there are other items. When I said we talk about how we move things around, phasing and funding, even the phase 2 grant was written in a way that, other portions of the phases could be utilized in there to give us flexibility. So at every turn that we can take flexibility and try to move things forward, and you look at it, we certainly, as a town have done that and plan to. So, yeah.
Just to add a little color around what happened. So during COVID, I guess, a lot of people left the Army Corps. They had an incredible shortage of engineers. We couldn't track people down. Mega Jane, when she actually tracked someone down on vacation at the beach on her cell phone, who said, "I'm reviewing 30 applications a day, and this is insane. I just don't, we can't function like this anymore." So what happened was it got transferred to another person, and Jen Leeper, our state delegation, Jen Leeper, Kristen McCarthy-Vake, and Sarah Kitt, they helped us lobby Jim Himes to make sure that, and Jimmy Tickey, they got on the phone and started pushing the Army Corps. So this has been a really interesting process. They're incredibly understaffed. They're having trouble hiring people, and the backlog is twice what it normally is.
Thanks, Bill, for that explanation. Thanks, David.
Thank you. Representative Shea.
Thank you, Chris Shea, District 2. So the ARPA funds are not going to be used for this project, but you're earmarking them for something else?
That's the next item we're going to discuss in a moment.
Okay, thanks.
Anything, any other questions regarding the Rooster River bonding? Seeing none, we'll go on to the next item.
Okay, so yes, the ARPA funds. We are planning to do some reallocations, and if it's be helpful, I can walk through just the change items only for now, and then
That'd be great.
oftentimes people have questions about specific existing, I'm more than happy to answer them. So one of them is going to be, and if you're looking, this is labeled as ARPA Exhibit A, and there's 3 pages in total, and that's the ARPA schedule. So item number 2 on the list, the COVID recovery assistance. We had reviewed this the last time. We had taken a large block of funds out and said we were beginning to wind that down as we ended the ARPA program. So this takes the remaining amount and fully closes it out. Body cam, dash cam, and tasers item, line number 5. 5,320. There was just a small overage. They were going to take it out of the department budget. We just, for clean accounting sake, we said, let's just take it out of the ARPA funds. It's a small amount. Zeros that out then and is complete. The next one is the item number 7, Rooster River Detention Area. Again, you'll see 2.5 million, like what we had just talked about. So we brought that down to an even number, so the bonding was even. There's a small amount that's encumbered, but obviously we'll be spending out of anything that's been encumbered, so that closes it. Item number 16, electric car charging stations. So we have a balance in there of $21,125. We have a increase of $50,000 that's allocated. This is tied to an item that you'll see later on the schedule, the next one coming up for electric vehicles. This is in part bringing back police and fire, having, there was some programs tied to originally in the electric vehicle fleet, having them be doing a pilot program for police and fire. The RTM, I believe was the board out of the 3 the last time we did allocations that had really mentioned an interest in seeing what we could do to bring that back. So we went back and revisited that, something that Bill and myself early on, both of those lines, just some early misinformation when we were newer. And so we looked at it and we're going to revive that. So if you're going to get the electric hybrid vehicles, you're going to need to have chargers for them. So this brings this along with another set of grant funds that we have will bring police, fire, and DPW to having enough charging stations. So there's an increase there. Next one up is going to be line 30, electric hybrid vehicles, an increase of 306,000. So that's 3 vehicles for the police department. and one for the fire department. So again, as I mentioned, this is from the feedback from the last time, and going back, looking, and then and post that meeting, having a discussion, particularly with the police department, who actually had been looking forward to doing that pilot program. What the plan is to purchase 4 lasers that are 100% electric and are all patrol rated. That's for, higher speeds and more equipment and whatnot. We had done actually quite a bit of research on options from hybrids to electric, and both Chevy and Ford, and what the options are. And if you're going to go all electric, the Blazer is the closest and best option now that departments are working on. One piece of information just to bring back as well, not directly related to this set of funds, but the topic, we did after that last RTM meeting a few months back, confirm that the police department has also been buying hybrid vehicles in their fleet that are patrol rated and are out. In fact, oddly, Ford in their Explorer, which they use for police vehicles line, is only doing hybrids in the patrol rated model now, so you can't even buy them for admin. But they recently bought, I believe, 4 of them, and they're out on patrol. The next item up is going to be on the 3rd page. It's going to be Police Safe Corridor Program, number 39, an increase of $92,000. That was the cameras, license plate reading technology, visibility around school zones. That's a successful program. They would like to expand upon that program and make sure that it's interconnected in some other technology systems. So it's an increase of $92,000 to continue that. So obviously anywhere where we believe that there's been success, we'd like to continue to support those, and that's why we're looking at that. And then the last item, actually second to last item up, is going to be item number 41, Sturgis Project, for $350,000. This is a new item. So what we're looking on doing on this project is $350,000 from ARPA. It will come to you at a later date, but $350,000 from the H. Smith trust account and $350,000 from something called the in lieu of account, which is a TPZ related account where they take funds in, that will be looking to make a purchase of a parcel with a house on it that would be converted to use almost like anybody who's familiar with Nature's Classroom, but it'd be sort of a Nature's Classroom type area next to a Mill River area, and it would also alleviate traffic. One of the major issues on Sturgis is that they're getting, anytime they use it for the Mill River project, they're getting buses and vehicles that are parking up and down the road. It's not safe for anybody. And so that would alleviate not only the parking, but it would give an actual facility to use right there. And the last item is number 42, Lake Mohegan Playground Replacement for $75,000. This is a new item as well. There was a $75,000 grant that Representative Kitt and the 134th secured for $75,000 to replace the Lake Mohegan playground. So this is the other 75. A playground project of that size is about $150,000. There are various projects just like this that were done in ARPA, and there are also various ones coming up over the next few years in the waterfall. So this would take the project off the waterfall, and we would only have to make basically half the payment, because the rest is coming from state bonded funds that were secured at the end of session. So the best place to take that was ARPA. It was an easy place to match those funds.
Oh, thank you. Are there any questions? Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. Couple questions for you, Dave. The unallocated ARPA funds, am I reading that correctly, that we have just over 1.6 million still unallocated?
Yes, good question. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we had originally been looking, the last time we had this discussion with the boards, and then we ended up keeping Rooster. We were going to move it to basically the pavement and sidewalk line for lack of a better, it was a place that we knew that if we had put it in the line, that you can encumber with us, with state contractors and easily use right at the beginning of the next year. Knowing how many, even, how many times you keep revising this, we know that that's our, at the very last moment in December, place that we can go. But between now and then, if other things may come up, to move it in there and then potentially move it out, we decided that we would recommend moving to just an unallocated line, which we're totally allowed to do. It actually there used to be pieces in the unallocated. So, if there's other things that come up between now and then that we need to, come to the boards for, we can transfer it, and then worst case at the end, move it there. So we want to be more realistic about the fact that other things may come up.
Thank you. I just want to say that I'm a little disappointed to see either a lack of potential investment, again, in either lot purchases, affordable housing purchases, investing in that, especially with these funds that we know are sort of once in a lifetime at this point. And also, I'd be curious to know, I know that statewide, our arts and culture organizations are suffering tremendously. And I don't know, maybe Fairfield is an outlier in that case, but I see so many projects that are typical for, a capital plan for a town. I'd like to see things that are challenging to fund and that are struggling, in particular affordable housing, that we're leveraging these funds to help mitigate that problem. Just saying.
No.
First Selectman Gerber is coming up to talk about that.
I think for the first time, we are looking at ways to fund affordable housing, but not through like grant funding. And I'm not even sure how that would necessarily work. I haven't really thought it through. We're looking at helping to fund additional units of affordable housing the way some other towns in Connecticut do, through through leveraging the ability to phase in valuations, or tax valuations. So it's something that we haven't done before, but again, it's legal and it's something that other towns do so that you can, especially in the transport-oriented zones, you can go from maybe 12% affordable to something like 20%, using something that people generally refer to as tax abatements, but there's different ways to do it.
Thank you.
But I don't think the town is going to get into the business of managing affordable units. So, we have done some small deals, sort of with Habitat for Humanity, and we support the HUD, that HUD organization that Carol Martin runs, the Housing Authority. And, every time she tries to put in affordable units, the neighborhoods object strenuously. So that throws, and she wants to put in 100% affordable units. And so even though she has funding that she can get through other channels other than through the town, it's frustratingly difficult to build affordable housing in this town.
Thank you. Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark McDermott, District 9. I have a question concerning item number 28, the senior center renovation. You said in the last meeting that we only have enough money left there for the hood in the kitchen. What is the cost of the kitchen in total, and why can't we use some of these funds to get that finished for the seniors? And have you considered that
Yeah,
an option for these extra funds?
Yeah, I think, one of the issues is timing on some of these items. So we can get back with what the actual cost would have been. But we've been focusing on making sure that the current phases are done. And some things encumbering into the next, with a single vendor and already costed out, like I mentioned, certain things like if they have state vendors, we can roll into the next year, but we're really trying on some of these projects not to necessarily do that. We want to go with really safe plays as we get towards the end of here and try and close as many of these out as possible. So I think if we were to try to embark on that project as an example, that may be a better capital non-recurring at a smaller threshold where we have more flexibility. So really wasn't something that we looked at trying to at this stage to put in. I mean, I think that's sort of one of the things that if this was a year ago, we might have said, okay, it makes sense. We think we have plenty of time. But trying to put that in now, and then worrying about, potentially multiple vendors, timing, and same if you had to add contingency or things like that, you'd have to find it from somewhere else, because if you didn't then expend the funds and they were encumbered to a specific vendor, you'd lose them. So that's been, timing is really the biggest thing on a lot of this. It's not to say not going to do it. It's just anything of any level of risk.
Thank
I mean,
you.
it's a kitchen renovation. I don't know, the ins and outs of that for a building like that, but I mean, you have 6 months to get it done, and you must have already, there must be quotes on how much it would cost to do that.
I can get you some additional information on where it stands, but my understanding is that it would be in a commercial kitchen in a commercial building, is that it was going to go longer than that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Estorita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. And I kind of wanted to piggyback on the questions from Representative McCabe and Representative McDermott. I know you guys are you're holding back some of these funds to cover, whatever increases may come down the pike over the next few months on some of the projects that are already approved. But I guess my question is, do you have, let's say 3-4 months from now, you're sitting here and you still have 1.6 million. Do you have a plan to spend the money so that you're not scrambling the last 2-3 months of the year to allocate these to projects that you can get in under the deadline?
Yeah, we're going to be asking all the boards to schedule at the tail end of December one final meeting as a placeholder where we have, if necessary, final cleanups before the end of the year in all the lines to zero things out appropriately. But this will ultimately, if there's funds left in that, it doesn't go to anything else. Our intent is to move it to paving and sidewalks, because we can go to state bids where we encumber and then spend it right in the beginning of the spring without an issue at all. That's our safest plan if there's nothing. But, as you see, that number a couple of months ago was going to be, was going to be up in the, low mid twos, and now it's at 1.6, and you can see there's obviously, a list of other places allocating funds that are very helpful. So, we felt that we put it in paving and sidewalk right now, and then, 2 months from now or September, we came back and said, well, we think this project needs a little bit more. We're having, success over here. This came up. Then we've going to be pulling it from another line. So the thought process was that was a little disingenuous in sort of the allocating, and that unallocated was a more logical place to what it really is. It's unallocated right now, and then we can make that transfer at the end.
Understood. Thank you.
It'll be safe though.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? Seeing none, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving on, sorry to make you wait, Mr. Murray. We're here now to talk about the senior and disabled tax relief amendments. I was gonna have Representative Pistilli go up there too, but, you can go ahead. I just want to give a little bit of insight into this. Since we missed our May meeting, put the wording on the agenda so that we can get this approved at this meeting. Normally, it would have to sit on our agenda at least one additional meeting. However, just for it being timely, we would like it to get approved this month. In order for that to happen, 2/3 of us have to vote for this amendment ordinance, and I'll let Mr. Murray give us some reasoning of why we're doing these changes.
I apologize. I don't have my backup in front of me, and so I'm going to do this from memory. I believe there was 4 changes left. One was to lower the age for a surviving spouse, and that was to match the state program so that we didn't have a discrepancy. The other was to change and define when the deferral interest rate was set and actually say at what time of day, because the rate is the 10-year Treasury note, and that can change throughout the day. Then we were asking to define when the asset test was to be determined, at what point in time. Right now, it says when they apply, so that's a floating date. So we wanted to tie that to the date that their income is determined, which is the end of the calendar year. And I'm forgetting the 4th. Do you have the 4th, Sharon? Oh, yes, yeah. Sending an approved form to the applicant. That's, their benefit is printed on their tax bill, so they get the information there. And we can't actually determine the amount of the benefit until the mill rate is set. So we actually don't know what it's going to be until the applications are all taken.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding this ordinance that we will be voting on next week? Representative Garskoff.
Madam Moderator, is it one vote or do we need to vote to change, to waive the rule and then a separate vote on the item?
I've formulated it based on what we did when we voted for redistricting, our redistricting ordinance. We voted, and that wording was very similar. So we can check into that. Maybe I'll ask our town attorney or any of the lawyers or past moderators have some opinions. Representative Wackerman.
We can talk about it offline, but I think it maybe should be 2 different
Okay,
resolutions.
so someone will have to amend that, make an amendment in those wordings so that we vote for 2 separate things. But the rules to regulate, which we'll get to shortly this meeting, do require a 2/3 vote. Any other questions? Representative Carson.
Just to clarify, for tonight's meeting at the.
Talk into the microphone.
So how do we deal with this issue tonight?
Oh, it's an ordinance, so we cannot vote on an ordinance. An ordinance would not pass a consent calendar anyhow. So, I mean, you can just have a discussion on it and not make a vote, but ordinances cannot pass our consent calendar, according to our rules to regulate, which we'll get to later in this meeting. Any other questions? Oh, okay. All right, Representative McDermott just said he agreed with Representative Wackerman as a former moderator. Any other comments, questions? All right, thank you very much. Our ethics ordinance continues to be held in LNA. So we're not going to discuss that. I'm going to skip our rules to regulate at this moment so that we can move on to other people that are here. And we'll get back to that at the end of the agenda. Becky Bunnell is online. Presentation order 14, agenda item 16 to talk about the flood and erosion control board update. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Great, thank you. So what we are requesting, first of all, my name is Becky Bunnell. I'm the chair of the Flood and Erosion Control Board. We had requested of the Board of Selectmen that they enact a resolution to update basically our town charter such that it would comply with the updated Connecticut General Statutes, chapters 477, section 2584. That was basically just updated as part of the 2021 state update. And there were 3 areas that we're requesting be updated. One is that the flood and erosion control boards across the state of Connecticut have been changed to flood prevention, climate resilience, and erosion control boards. And they added the word climate resilience because of the importance of these boards looking at climate resilience. So we're just requesting that we are able to update our name accordingly to comply with the general statutes. The next area that they updated was allowing flood and erosion control boards to have additional members as well as alternates. And so we are again requesting that there is an ordinance written that would allow and amend our town charter to allow that we could have up to 7 members that would be appointed by the Board of Selectmen, as well as possibly up to 3 alternate members. And the reason we're asking for this is that we feel that with climate impacts and climate change coming up, our board of 5 right now, we could use the extra help. We are expanding our remit, which used to be much more of a coastal remit, to be a total town remit. We need to be looking at riverine flooding. We need to be looking at underpass flooding. We need to be looking at downtown flooding. And so we would like to have more members of the Flood and Erosion Control Board to be able to cover all those different areas of town. And then the last thing that we are asking the ordinance to reflect is to clarify what seems to be a little bit of ambiguity in the charter right now. Flood and erosion control boards, according to the state statutes, can have different roles and responsibilities. And right now, our town charter is a little bit vague in terms of what it says the roles and responsibilities are. It says that it gives us up to I think it's section 25-84, and generally also looks at expanding beyond that to the 25- up to 25-95, I think it is, or 94. And so what we're asking is just clarity that indeed that we would have the full remit as allowed by the state of Connecticut to be sections 25-84, inclusive of 25-85 to 25-94. Just so we have clarity on what it is we as a board will be doing. Now, obviously, anything we would recommend as a board would go through all of the normal town processes in terms of budgeting. We would go through the Board of Selectmen, go through the Board of Finance and the RTM the same way any other financial request would go. So with that, can I answer any questions from anyone?
Are there any First Selectman Gerber wants to make a comment?
Now's the perfect time to put in a plug. Becky's going to be looking for people for the board, and I think you're looking specifically for at least to fill some of them with people that live in the riverine flooding areas. And that's been a challenge, right, to find people. So we hope to get a lot of applications. So if you know anyone on this board, you should ask that lives in, the Rooster River area or an area that floods, ask them to apply. Right, Becky?
Yes, please.
And number 2 is Becky really started a project. It's taken it's been winding its way through different shapes and forms, and it's pretty close to going out in a really extensive RFP that Becky took the lead on. But we have hired a renowned expert on coastal and riverine flooding, and his name's David Murphy. I'm not sure if this board had seen, or that RTM has seen the contract, but it was passed by the Board of Selectmen. He's sort of like acting like an owner's rep on putting together an RFP for a master flood and erosion control plan for the town, and that is going to be quite with practical solutions that we can implement. And so that's going to be something that's going to happen. That RFP, I think really we're kind of putting the finishing touches on it, and that's going to go out in the near future. It's going to be a big project, complicated project, probably with contractors and subcontractors, and it's going to hopefully end up with a plan where we have distinct, deliverables that we can actually do, for the town. So anyone who's willing to jump on board is going to be very busy, but it's going to be very interesting next few years or several years.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Representative Astorita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. Can you just elaborate, Becky, a little bit on the additional responsibilities that the commission would be taking on with the under 25-84 through 25-94?
I'd have to go back and look at what changed in the 2021 remit. I know that certain things we have to do as additional responsibilities would be such things like we have to, as a board, prepare a biannual report that we didn't used to have to do. I think that there've always been a series of things that that flood and erosion control boards were allowed to do by town remit. I think a couple of resilience types of things were opened up as part of that. I can get a more inclusive list. I'd have to go back and compare the old statutes to the new statutes to see what exactly changed.
Yeah, no, I would appreciate that. I don't want you to create a tremendous project, but I would appreciate just having an idea of the additional things that we would be approving you guys to get involved with. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is we've always, as a board, sort of had an oversight role of all of the flood and erosion control projects throughout the town. We work very closely with the engineering department to do these. We spend a lot of time talking to individual homeowners who have flooding issues, and we will work with the engineering department to look at possible solutions if merited. We have probably up to 19 different projects right now that we're working on, going anything from tide gate repairs to, flooding and underpasses to, bridge and culvert types of repairs. So I think where I'm seeing the extra work is really going to be, as Bill said, taking on this master town flood and erosion control and resilience plan. We have not had an updated plan for the town since 2015. So this is going to be a fairly large project, and I envision our members wanting to go look at what other towns have been doing, meet with other flood and erosion control boards to see what kinds of things they've been doing. For example, New Haven has a series of bioswales that might work really well for our town, so we'd want to explore something like that. So there's a series of things that I would envision these additional members taking on, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I appreciate it. And I'd just like to know, where the heck were you guys last Friday, for God's sakes?
Sorry about that. Actually, we just did a major underpass study with 4 different ways that we can protect our underpasses. Unfortunately, we haven't implemented any of them, but that's kind of what this 2024 updated master plan will help us do as a town, is have various options that we as a town can evaluate and decide whether to move forward with and fund.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding this item? Seeing none, thank you so much for coming out. We appreciate it.
Sorry to be late. I didn't know
No
that.
problem. You were towards the end anyhow. All right, now we're going to call up our town registrars, Kathy Politi and Matthew Wagner, to discuss about how many voting locations we should have for early voting. They're coming before us because if they want more than one location, or if we want more than one location, we have to vote on that. And just for reference, I chose the number 2 on there for 2 voting locations. You'll notice in your backup that Mr. Wagner would like 3, and then Mrs. Politi would like 1. I had to choose a number, and I put 2. So if we, as a body, want to change the number, we can make a amendment to do that. Oh, and one thing I just remembered when I'm talking about amendments, next week, somebody does have to amend Will Diaz's term of service. It was on there for 2024 to 2024. So someone will have to make a friendly amendment to amend that as well. Sorry, getting back to the registrars. Go ahead. I don't know which one of you wants to go first.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us this evening. It became clear as I was talking to a couple of the members that what exactly early voting is sort of like a little bit obscure. You guys have like a really great grasp on like the pension funds and bonding and sort of what's happening in the budgets, but you know, our world is a little bit of a dark art. So I just have a couple of minutes just to sort of describe what's going on. I'll talk about my proposal for a minute, and Kathy will talk about her proposal for a minute as well, I'm sure. So early voting is a new service that we have to offer here in Connecticut. Legislature passed it last year. The number of locations, excuse me, in towns with a population of over 20,000 has to be determined by the legislative body. So that's why we're coming to you. We are responsible for determining the locations themselves that get chosen. Because we've had sort of some back and forths on these subjects, we've appealed to the Secretary of State's office for some advice. And they say, well, if you two don't agree to what the locations are going to be, then that'll also be determined by your legislative body as well. So we have that guidance from them, even though that's outside the statute, and you see a little sample of it up there. So the way early voting works is that we have to open up one or more locations in the town for voters to come and vote early for a period of 14 days prior to a general election or 7 days prior to each primary. So it's an 8-hour day most days. There's 2 days prior to each election that you have an expanded service of four additional hours. So one thing that I think a lot of people are not aware of is that early voting, people can go to any location, no matter how many we have. Any voter can go to any early voting location to take advantage of the service there. That's a model in the election world that's called vote centers, where like we have to be able to serve voters from any precinct. It's not like a regular polling place in that way. We're also required to allow people to register to vote for the general election, but not the primary, during the period that early voting is taking place. So people can come who are not registered at all and appear, present their ID, sign their form, and be allowed to vote on the spot in one transaction. What that requires is that we will have to have computers at those sites. So that's something that, you know, we have to work with IT and have a connection to the town network to be able to make that work. Now, voters can still use absentee ballots in the way they have in the past. If you're eligible to get one, you can still apply for one. So that's something that I heard a question about once. When we go to election day, the books that we send to those polling places will be pre-marked with the voters that have already voted early and have already voted absentee. So that's something that when you appear at your polling place, you'll see the people who've already voted at that time. Now, nationally, Connecticut is the 46th state to adopt early voting. I gathered some statistics from other places. Nationally, there's one early voting site per 7,026 voters. That's the national average. Looking just at jurisdictions of about Fairfield size, plus or minus 5,000 voters, the average is 3.6 sites per jurisdiction. Information that the Secretary of State's office gathered for their report to the legislature shows a utilization of between 4 and 66% of people voting early. So that's obviously a very broad range. The number that they saw as the median and sort of have suggested that we target is about 30%. So our proposal that we made sort of in budget time kind of reflects that advice that they had given to us. And in terms of what we expect to see from other states and what the experience has been in places that have been doing this for a longer time, is that you have peak usage at the sort of very beginning and the very end of the period. So you might have up to 2 or 3 times the volume on like the last day that you might have in a day in the middle of the time frame. I did put a link in there to like the Secretary of State's report, which kind of is a broad survey, and we'll also send you out to a lot of other great data sources if that's what you want to get into. Now, for Fairfield specifically, we budgeted for about 16,000 people participating. I do think that that's like an optimistic type of estimate of how many people might use it. Perhaps, you know, I guess you would rather have too many, plan for too many than plan for too few, but that's what we put in the budget. That would bring you to an estimate of about 120 to 260 voters per hour as a range of what we might expect of residents using it. We do have in our budget a notice to voters, as you've seen for the last probably 10 years now of sort of where people's polling places are and recent changes, and early voting I think will feature very prominently in that. And the staffing requirements by statute are that we have to have at least 1 moderator on site at each location with other positions as needed. So we have budgeted for those in our budget that you recently passed. We also have internal office staff that we can use for that if we see fit. And we have grants of about $6,500 that we received already, and we expect another grant to come from the state. I don't know if we have a ballpark number, but the Secretary of State's office is trying to figure out how to spread around. Is it $10 million? Is the number?
Something like that.
Yeah. So they're gonna be telling us, hey, you're gonna have another grant sometime later this year.
Probably find out in a couple of days.
Oh, well, that would be very nice.
Kathy, if you want to talk, just make sure you're talking in the microphone so those online can hear.
All right. So Kathy and I have sort of different proposals, and we've been negotiating, and we've made some progress back and forth. Some like, as we come to you, it sort of becomes a question of like, are we negotiating with each other or the RTMs? That's sort of like a factor in how we discuss this stuff. Registrar Pleiades proposing 1 location for both the primary and general as Old Town Hall as the site. And if I'm not representing your most up to date, let me know. My proposal is to have 1 location for the primary, either the Orthodox Synagogue or the Jennings Elementary School, which are the most sort of centrally located of the spots that we've been able to identify for the primary, and 3 for the general, Fairfield University, Sacred Heart University, and Or Hadash. So I do have 2 slides about sort of what I was going to propose, but I've been talking for a while. Do you want to? Okay. All right. So my proposal, and we have visited these sites and sort of done like site surveys of them. So I'm proposing the 2 universities who have both offered sort of excellent spaces with a lot of square footage, secure place to sort of store our materials at the end of each night, and also guaranteed us parking in different locations on each campus. So I feel really good about the sites that they've presented to us. I'll say my thinking about this is that I identify the university population in the town as being essentially the most underserved population that we have, right? They mainly are not allowed to have cars. They're not familiar with the process. And I think that providing a uniform service to them that makes voting accessible also minimizes the sort of biggest X factor that we have in planning our elections each year, which is that we don't really know what's going to happen with university students, right? Last year, we had a substantial number sort of come out and surprise us and exhausted our supply of ballots that we'd planned for their voting district and, on election day. And so providing that service in a way that's over a longer period of time, I think does address that concern as sort of what can disrupt our election day process. The third location that I'm proposing is the Or Hadash Synagogue. The rabbi there has been reaching out to us for about 18 months. A number of congregants there have been very interested in how to provide like a nonpartisan service to help people vote in the town. And so they had given us tours initially when we were talking about polling places last year. And so that was something that sort of stuck with us as we were talking about early voting locations. So they've also, of the places we've identified, that is the most centrally located in the town in terms of where people are geographically in relation to the polling places. They do have a large room available and ample parking as well. So my original idea and proposal is to say, why don't we try to have a location in each of the town's 3 state representative districts to try and make voting more accessible to voters wherever they might live in the town. The other thing I think that having multiple provides, and I think is an important feature, is it does provide us with sort of redundancy and resiliency in how we provide this service. If something happens like with a weather emergency or something of that nature, then it does not bring down our entire service as well. So that's a consideration that I have, and we've been talking a lot internally amongst ourselves about how do you address kind of security concerns and what do you have to do to make sure that the voting is not disrupted, but also you're protecting the materials in the process as well. So finally, I just made a little bit of a calculation for different sites. These are the sites that have said yes to us thus far. There are a number that have turned us down. So there are a number of sort of great ideas for places that have just said, no, we're not going to be able to make this service available to you, or it would be too disruptive to our existing programming or whatever else. Obviously, the public schools, we would be living in a different world if we could take up residence in a public school for 2 weeks in the school year. That is not where the town or the parents are right now. So they are not able to accommodate us for sort of the extended time of early voting. I will say the one sort of disappointment I've had in sort of trying to identify spots is finding a place in the western third of the town. And so if there are people who are here that have suggestions that we should look at in that area, like my North Star in identifying these places is to have the minimum travel distance possible for voters. So if someone can show us a place and propose to us a place that's going to bring down that travel distance on average by finding a place in the western third, please do bring that to our attention. We would sort of love to hear about that. So that's what I'm suggesting and proposing, but I will turn this over to Kathy and remind you that we have to hold this button to make it go.
Absolutely. Thank you. Kathy Politi, Registrar of Voters. We both agree that the August primary, which will be Republican only, should be one location, correct? So I think you guys need to help us determine what that location is at this point, because I want Old Town Hall in the second floor conference room. We are steps away as Registrar of Voters. We are right nearby. The ballots would be, just transferred right downstairs to the vault, which is a dual lock vault. It's very secure. I believe, Matt, you wanted the synagogue? I think the synagogue is a very bad idea because of the current political climate we are in. We want to reduce any issues that are possible, and there could be anti-Semitism. You're just kind of combining some problems, if you have it there. Recently, a couple of years ago, you didn't want it at St. Pius because it was a religious institution. So I think that we should just stick with that. Let's see, and early voting for November, I believe it should just be one location. There is no city or town within this, the entire state that is having more than one location. Are you aware of any?
Not yet, but
No.
I don't think people have had these meetings yet by and large.
Yeah, I've talked to Hartford, Bridgeport. They have a larger voting population and they are not having more than one. It's obviously easier to control when you have one location. And we went to emergency management meeting last week, and it just doesn't make sense to me at all. So that's why we're here. I don't think it's a Republican versus a Democrat issue at all. I see it more as practicality. There's also an issue with the number of moderators. If you have one location, you only need 14 moderators. If you have two locations, that's 28 moderators you have to locate. 3 locations would be 42 moderators. I have difficulty trying to find 10 for the August primary. So I kind of disagree with that. He's hyper-focused on centrally located to the town, but I know like in New York State, it's all regionalized early voting. And for me, I can understand on election day why you would want to have, people being close to their home, because they only have 14 hours, right, to vote on election day. But here they have 14 days, and it also includes 4 weekend days and evenings. So, and 4 days, it'll be 8 to 8 in the morning till 8 at night. So I think they have plenty of opportunity to vote. And that's about it, other than the CVRS is right at Town Hall. So that's all. If you have any questions, let us know.
Thank you. I just want to get some clarity before we move on. So the item on our agenda for today or for next week to vote on is the number of locations for the November election. It's not to vote on the locations themselves. I was under the impression that you guys were in agreement or that you guys could come to terms with Republican primaries, because that's not on our agenda for next week. And if that needs a timely vote, then we need to put that on our agenda. And I need clarity on that today.
I think at this point, we're not in agreement, correct?
So we are in agreement that one location is appropriate for the August primary. I'll say that our initial negotiations sort of said like let's agree to this one for this event, and we'll do other things for November. Right now, we're a little bit further apart than we sort of started out with that. My recommendation to the RTM when I wrote to you, Madam Moderator, was to basically make an assignment of the locations on the assumption that would resolve the matter and not have to return to you in a month and a half or 2 months to take it up again. But certainly the deadline for the November election locations is the first week of September. So, if you would like us to take it up again at the end of the summer, we certainly can.
So my question for you, I think we misunderstood each other. My understanding was that once we chose the locations, I believe you guys were going to work, once we chose the number of locations, you guys were going to work together to come across that. And we were hoping we weren't going to have to bring it before us. So if you guys want to tell me now to get it on the agenda for next week, the location of the primary, the number of locations as is for the general election, and the locations of the general election, then we can do that now, or we can wait until August for the locations of the August, or of the general election. I do not want to call a special meeting for this, so please don't make me. Everyone here in this room will not be your friend.
Yeah, I think we can hold off on the, actual locations for November, because that doesn't need to be decided until September.
Okay, but then we'll add for the Republican primary, the location. So we'll be adding an agenda item in the supplemental for that.
Yes, as we couldn't come to agreement and we're still not on the same page on that one.
Would either, Mr. Wagner, would you like to go talk about the location for the primary since you didn't have the opportunity? I'm not sure. Would you guys want to comment on that?
I would just say I would recommend that you would put the November on at the same time. And I think that looking at them as a sort of a set of global issues to kind of be negotiated and compromised on together, I think it makes a lot of sense to me. But again, I'll certainly defer to you and what you want to do for that.
My understanding is that it doesn't have to come before the RTM unless you guys can't agree. So I don't want to take over your powers or your rights as registrars if there's a chance that you're going to come to an agreement on that. But it sounds like you're not. So that's, I mean, it certainly could be part of the discussion in location, in amount of locations. And then, if you guys want to wait through a 3-hour meeting again in August, feel free to not agree. We'll look into that. We can talk about that. But so for now, I'll definitely put the primary on the location and then as is the number of locations. And I want to reach out and maybe to our town attorney to see what happens if we do vote on the locations. I would guess that that's set in stone and then you guys don't have any freedom to change that amongst yourselves. So maybe we can talk about that offline in the next day or two. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Madam Moderator, yeah, just a point of clarification. So we're voting on we are voting solely on the number of polling locations, and your goal is to have Ms. Politi and Mr. Wagner go back, work together, and see if they can come to agreement on the specific locations. And hopefully they can do that by September. If not, they'll have to come before our regular September.
It has to be in August.
August, okay.
They have to know by, what is it, August? It's like the day or two after our August meeting.
I think it's September 5th, right, Matt?
Right, so since our September meeting's not till later in September, it would be at our regular August meeting.
And then do we have to vote on the number of polling places for the primary and the general?
We do not have to vote on the number of polling places for the primary because they're both in agreement that there's one. And then the statute is if they wanted more than one, let's say they both wanted 3 places, then we would have to vote to increase that to more than one. But they wouldn't have to come before us right now if they were both in agreement for the general election for one. Is that correct?
We were surprised by the Secretary of State's advice to our town clerk in the spring that the RTM needed to act even if we did agree that it would be one. That is what they advised us in March. And so that the RTM took it up at that time. I don't know if they have changed their opinion since that time.
Okay, so we already voted in March for one location for the primary. That's right. So
Okay.
we've already done that voting. And so what's on the current agenda is if you vote yes to the current agenda, you will be voting that there'll be 2 locations, which was just a number I inserted because we couldn't have it be a general thing. So if we find that the majority of the body wants only 1 location, somebody could make an amendment to change that, or vice versa. If they want 15 locations, we can decide that as well at this point. But then my goal would be if we decided on 15 locations, God forbid, then they would have a task to go back and find 15 agreeable locations.
Got it, okay.
Representative Wackerman.
Are we also voting next week on the location for the primary?
We are now. It's not on our agenda, but it will be in the supplemental.
Thank you.
Representative Zezma.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Liz Esma, District 4. So thanks to both of you for all the work you've done to help us understand what our options are. And so 2 quick questions. Have either of you spoken to the police department about any concerns they would have to hold early voting at a synagogue?
I have not, but to me, that just pops right to mind, that that would be an issue. And possibly even having more than one location could be an issue because, you know, they're very concerned about this upcoming election. And there is no doubt that one location is much easier to control and to secure.
Okay, maybe you guys can follow up with the police on that. My next question is to clarify for us and for the public. So let's say there is a vote, or an agreement or a vote on more than one location. How do voters get split up between them, or is it really a public option? We just go wherever, you know?
They can go wherever they want.
Right.
So there is an issue in my mind with that. It's highly probable that the Connecticut voter registration system could go down and crash. We're all using it for 14 days. It's a presidential election with, you know, it's going to be a high turnout. If it crashes, you know, we should have paper lists like we do at the normal polling locations. And you can highlight them and make sure that they're on the list. If there's one location, if there's two locations, you don't know whether they went to the other location and voted or not. You'd have to figure that out somehow after the fact. But if you just have one location, you know who was voted by that paper list if the system were to crash.
When was the last time a system crashed?
Weekly, thereabouts. Okay. Yeah. So I'll say that, you know, we've had that experience of the system going down on an election day. You know, it does make us run around like chickens with our heads cut off a little bit for a minute. But, you know, what you would do, and because the nature of this voting is that people are not casting their ballots in tabulators, they're returning their ballots in envelopes, is that at the time that you're entering the ballots back in of the people who voted during the time the system was offline, you know, should someone have submitted two ballots in a act of voting espionage of some kind, that you would say, oh, well, we're not, you know, we discovered when we tried to enter their second ballot that they had already voted, and we would set that ballot aside, as you might imagine.
Okay, so the process does kind of circumvent the type of problems you have now in general elections. So you're 1 and 3. Have you discussed the possibility of a compromise at 2? Is that on the table as a possible compromise?
For me, once I had thought about that at one time, but then once it came down to the number of moderators that would be needed, that would really be a hardship. And I think if you were to ask any registrar in the state of Connecticut, really, if they would have an issue with that and have difficulty, that they would. So
what I find really interesting is the contrast between, well, we're the 46 states, so we're kind of dragging our feet here, which means we have 45 states of precedent to look at, which is pretty compelling, versus a state where at the moment everything is new to everyone, and to model somebody else is really not as advantageous as to look at how other states have done it and probably refined it, I would assume, over time. So I would say at this point, I'm leaning towards, you know, a scenario where we are encouraging turnout and making it convenient. As a resident of Stratfield, I can tell you what it's like to drive downtown at any time of day, practically. So, you know, again, we'd like to hear more. I will feel free to contact you myself and appreciate all the work you've done. My own bias is to say that I think more than one is probably what would best serve us. And thank you both for being here.
Representative Horton.
Hi, Margaret Horton, District 10. I had a couple of things. First, I'm really glad that Connecticut is finally getting on board with early voting. The research around early voting is really clear and compelling, that it encourages and gets more people to participate in elections, and ultimately that benefits all of us to have a more engaged electorate. So I think this is a really important topic. One comment, I guess I'm confused if the best practices really indicate that it would be, I think you said, one site per just about 7,000 voters, then it does seem to make sense to me, just looking at the math, to have more than one site in Fairfield. I understand that this is new in Connecticut, and so we don't necessarily have a lot of data from other towns in Connecticut, but that just, if that's national best practices, that seems to make sense to me. Not that anybody was asking for my 2 cents. I happen to like the ideas of the universities and town hall only because town hall is a very recognizable landmark, just putting it out there. Anyway, on to my questions. 2 things. In terms of the campuses, which I do think is a great idea, and we should take advantage of these institutions, what they can offer us. When I go to events on campus, sometimes I can get very lost. And so I just wondered if there'd been conversations with both Sacred Heart and Fairfield in terms of whether they might be able to help out with signage, or how they could or having the locations in a place that's sort of an easily recognizable place on campus. Just so that was one question. And then the other question, I think one of you mentioned that there had recently been a meeting with emergency management folks in town about this. And I'm curious what their perspective was, just to kind of get input about that.
Just to speak to the locations that we were offered by the universities, they both had sort of a similar perspective, which is to say, what is an area of campus that is less trafficked, that it would be easily accessible to people. For Sacred Heart, they've proposed, they call it the sunken lobby on the West Campus, which is the former GE site. There's a staff-only garage that students don't have access to, that they are able to guarantee us parking in, that has a no stair step accessible route for people to enter. So that is what they're providing, as well as signage and wayfinding and anything else that we would need from that perspective from them. For Fairfield University, they are proposing one of 2 large rooms in the media center building at the south end of the campus. People would access through Barlow Road, and there's a large parking lot there that they would be able to reserve us, as they said, 20 spots in to use on a daily basis. So both of those are larger than a typical polling place in terms of the square footage that's available to us. And I didn't show the math of this in the sort of the expected volume, but if you're talking about 120 to 260, you're talking people per hour, you're talking about 15 to 25 like parking spaces needed if you're going to sort of go backwards from what the state proposes in terms of our voting booths and assuming how long it takes people to vote. So town-wide, you would want to have like a throughput of like 25 parking spots at all times to make sure that people were not going to be circling a lot to try and find somewhere to go.
I just want to add, if I can, that really the most important thing to keep up with the flow really is having enough people on the computer system, because that's where the slow up would be. So basically you would add more computers rather than more locations.
Just what about the follow-up about the emergency management meeting?
So this exercise didn't really touch on early voting specifically. It was a series of scenarios sort of concerning either cybersecurity or physical security or acts of terrorism and different kinds of things that might happen in and around the election process. And it was an opportunity for registrars from all towns, not just Fairfield, to walk through with the emergency personnel, like what would their response be? Like how would they view as a matter of sort of first impression, like if someone were physically blocking a polling place or if there was a white powder attack, like what do you do in those scenarios? And we get to exchange information, or we would say, well, would we be able to stay in the building? And they're like, no, you can't stay in the building. That kind of stuff where we understand a little bit more about what they need and they understand a little bit more about sort of the election rules and what we need.
Thank you for clarifying. I was thinking it meant like Fairfield's emergency management advising on doing the polling sites, but that makes more sense. Thank you.
I just want to say I've seen everyone's hands. I have it written down. We have about 6 people on the list. Representative Pistilli. Representative Garskoff. Okay, Representative Wapnitzky. Wapinski, sorry. Say it. Say it for me.
Are we allowed to comment on the proposed locations? Because I have a comment. Okay, I am adamantly against the synagogue. Your point about anti-Semitism. I'm a member there. I was an employee there for a number of years. The logistics are not good for that. I think that you are, maybe you're in contact with the rabbi, but, and I know it's supposed to be partisan, but I think in places like synagogues, there's a lot of issues and a lot of opinions, and it may be opening up a Pandora's box. So for all those reasons, most really a lot because of the anti-Semitic, the problems that we're having in this town, and it is a bad idea. And I would hope that you would just get rid of it.
Thank you. Sorry about the name. Representative Rock.
I absolutely have no problem going to a synagogue to vote. I have full faith in our police department, and I would welcome the idea of going into a synagogue and voting there. So that's just my opinion and comment. So I just, I'm trying to do the math in my head, and I have 1 and I have 3, and I have 16,000 people that are expected to vote. Is that correct? Lower? What do
Can
we
you
think?
speak in the microphone?
What do we think?
I'm really thinking it may only be, say, 20% or something like that. I would highly doubt, and most registrars have kind of toned down, you know, what they think. And in the budget, I would just caution you, we're always, you know, as I put things in the budget, I overestimate, you know, so.
Matt, do we have a number we think?
Well, I mean, I think overestimating is a form of planning, right? To say, well, you know, if you have a situation where you're throwing some number of ballots in the dumpster versus being in crisis where you don't have enough ballots for people to vote, you would definitely rather the former than the latter. So, you know, I think we came up with that number internally as like what do we think the maximum sort of participation we could experience would be. I'll say that a lot of registrars, and I don't know whether this isn't a valuable insight or a misdirection, but I think a lot of registrars saw the limited interest in the presidential preference primary, which was our first sort of run at this. And in Fairfield, we had about 200 people coming out to vote in that at early voting. And it's you know, the question I think is, you know, people were like, wow, we're really bored waiting around for voters to come. So let's scale back our operations for November. But I guess the question is, to what extent will the November election reflect that? And so, you know, I'll say culturally, registrars, I think, are very resistant to change just as a community. And I think, you know, people are saying, let's plan something small that might not be heavy and not advertise it a lot. And hopefully, you know, it'll be really minimal and we'll be able to see our families some more and stuff, like, you know, just in terms of like, are you planning and trying to bring about like a higher participation level, or are you like attempting to bring about a lower participation level just for the sort of administrative convenience? And I think that that's a perspective I think a lot of my colleagues around the state do have, which is that this is different and a nuisance, and it's like a lot of people are leaving the field because they're not ready to like leave their other jobs to work at early voting for the entire month of October. So, you know, the feelings that people have and sort of what they're doing to prepare for it, I think are very different based on kind of the assumptions they're having.
All right, so we really don't have a number that because that was really my question. So I heard 16,000. So and it's really a math problem. So if you've got 1 location or 3 locations, if you've got 16,000 people that are going to vote, and that's 1 location be like 1,100 a day. Versus 3 locations, and that would be a lot less people. And I'm worried about the moderator issue. So if you know, to your point, if we've got a problem with moderators and 1 versus 3 is a big leap. So Matt, can you explain to me how we're going to fill moderator spots for 3 spots when I'm hearing 1 might even be an issue?
I will say, Kathy raised this issue to me last week as a concern. It's not that we need 42 moderators, but we need to fill 42 shifts, right? That one moderator could work for 3 days or 5 days or 10 days if they wanted to. So when she raised that concern to me, I called the moderators that I've used in the most recent 3 elections and was able to fill 90 shifts in that time. So I would say I'm not concerned about the logistics of identifying moderators. I do hear my colleagues' concern about sort of security issues and say, well, how do you provide adequate security at these places? And I think that to my mind, and I've conveyed this to Kathy as well, I think that our priorities, like I'm talking about access and she's talking about security, and I actually don't think that those 2 things are incompatible. I think that, we figure out what are the security obstacles or the vulnerabilities and how do we address them, and that, I'll be very amenable to those sort of solutions and hopefully find Kathy also being amenable to expanding access. And I think that to the extent that we both want kind of different things, it's not like I don't want Kathy to not have what she wants, and I don't think that she necessarily wants to stop people from being able to access the places. So it's like, how do we address those 2 sets of concerns that we both have?
I'll just close by saying, I think the best solution is 2 places. It seems to split the baby. And that's probably what we want. And I'll just end it at that.
Thank you. Representative Barrett.
Thank you, Steve Barrett, District 7. So I just want to get a little clarification, if you don't mind. So we have to allow early voting 14 days before November 5th. Now, would that include the weekends as well? So all 14 days?
Yes, there would be 4 weekend days in that.
Okay, so you have to staff basically every single day for 14 straight days leading up to November 5th.
Correct. And my concern is if you use the same moderator for multiple days, that there is burnout, and then that's when mistakes happen. But like I said, for me, it's a Republican only August primary. I'm having difficulty just finding, the 12 that I need. So he trains, moderators. So he knows a lot of moderators across the whole state. But I'm not sure who he's using or who he called or whether they're experienced people or not.
And moderators can come from anywhere throughout the state.
Correct. They can come from any place in the state of Connecticut.
Okay, so if this is happening for 14 straight days, how is a place like the synagogue able to do this if they are running services and whatnot?
I'll say that the room that they've proposed is separate from the place of worship, and that it is accessible even during those times. And I was invited to conduct a parking survey at a time when a service was in progress to identify the number of parking spots that would be available. And that time, which is sort of the 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Saturday, was certainly well over 30 spots available during that time.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the proposed place at Town Hall is the 2nd floor?
Correct. Yeah, the 2nd floor of Old Town Hall.
And Old Town Hall, if memory serves me right, is one tiny little elevator?
Yes, there is one elevator there.
So it would be very prohibitive for a lot of people, especially older people, to actually vote the 2nd floor.
No, I have my abilities here too. So I don't really have any issues. You just use the elevator. I have to use that on a daily basis when I work.
Okay, thank you very much.
Representative Estorita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. couple of questions on the number. So what is the throughput on election day, on regular election day? Because I think you had a slide where you're expecting like 120 to 260 people per hour. What's the throughput on election day?
So a typical polling place will have between 100 to 200 as for a presidential year, the number of people going through in each hour.
Okay. What is the cost to operate each location for early voting for the entire 14 days? What is the cost of each location?
I'll say that we don't know exactly what the utilization will be at each time, and the statute requires us to have a moderator present at each location.
Right, whether you
that's
have whether you have one voter or 10,000 voters,
That's right,
you have a fixed cost to operate the site. What is that cost?
I wouldn't say there's a fixed cost to operate this. I would say our other than ballots, the costs are staffing. And that is going to be flexible, that if we find that it's, we're having long lines and we need to hire additional people for the next day to make sure that things go more quickly, that's sort of.
So you said you've budgeted, right? So what have you budgeted? What's the number you've budgeted to operate each site?
I think it was 8 staff, not for each site, 8 staff plus a moderator was the budget proposal.
So what's the number?
I don't have the dollar figure offhand. That was the staffing number that we had.
So I mean, can you give me an estimate on what you think that number is?
I don't have the budget with me, but I know it was just the one moderator, and it was going to be the same number of staffing, whether there was one location or more locations. That's what I recall from the budget meeting.
So could you, I guess one of my takeaways, could you get us the dollar numbers to operate each site for the 14 days? Next question. And I think this is particularly pertinent if the synagogue is chosen as a site. I assume there is a certain level of physical security that has to be there. I'm not talking about like the ballot security. I'm just talking about police. Is that correct?
Correct. And during our emergency management meeting, there was a scenario of protesters. So, that is a huge concern of mine. It just seems like you're adding gasoline to the fire, and that just shouldn't happen.
So
using a synagogue.
Right. So the synagogue issue aside for the moment, there's also an additional cost to the town of maintaining physical security, correct? Because you will have to have officers at all 3 locations, right?
I'll say that in a typical election, we don't have any police assigned
You
to
don't?
the voting
Okay.
locations. So they certainly make themselves available to us and make sure that we know how to contact them if an issue arises. I'll say that speaking with Rabbi Ratner, he said that they have security present at most times that the site is open. What he is asked for us to look into is for those 2 days where there are extended hours, where the service would be available before and after their typical hours, what would be involved in requesting police presence for those specific 4-hour windows.
But so if we chose the synagogue, obviously there will be some sort of cost to the Fairfield Police Department to secure that site, particularly in light of just, unfortunately, the environment that we're living in today. Is that fair? I mean, fair to say?
Yes, things have not yet been determined. We're still going to be dealing with more of the emergency meetings. So nothing was made in stone or
Right.
anything at
Okay.
this point. So those will continue. And I would think that you would need to have police at each location.
So I guess my fundamental question is I'm trying to just think through this and like what's the point of having 3 locations as opposed to 1?
Well, I'll say first, there is it massively reduces the travel distance that people have to use. So that's part of it.
Right. Okay. So
And I'll
let me
say
just
that-
let me just interrupt right there. Just so on that point, the main issue is we want people to only have to drive 2 miles as opposed to 5 miles. Maybe that's the big benefit. Is that what you're saying?
I'll wait for you to finish. I
just finished on that one. So is that the big benefit, reducing travel time?
That was the first one that I
Okay.
mentioned.
What's the other one?
Okay. I will say that I provided some research information to the RTM when we were considering polling places. I think scientific consensus is that each quarter mile of additional distance results in a 5% decrease in turnout for people. So I do think that that can be a substantial effect on how people do utilize the service. I'll also say specifically for the universities that the students are a variable in our election operations that I would like to render predictable by serving them in an organized way, to say that we're not going to wait to be surprised by how many of them turn up on election day to sort of take advantage of election day registration, but rather to try and provide a service in a way that is well organized, that we can serve them without disrupting election operations overall. So I think that that's a really substantial benefit that I think early voting at its best is going to allow us to run a smoother election process on election day if we use that opportunity to our advantage. So I think that that's, to my mind, having the universities be available, that is something that provides that is a worry and an anxiety in terms of how we do run our elections. So I think that that's a major advantage. As well. And I do think that it provides resiliency as well to say that if something does happen to town hall or something does happen to wherever it is that we may be, if our services become disrupted, that voting will continue regardless, right? So that's something that I'd say there's sort of different ways of thinking about security to say, well, is security about hardening a site and limiting access, or is security about planning for failure points and making sure that your service will continue regardless? So I'd say that that's an overall, survey of what I think is the advantage.
So the 2 big advantages that you've talked about here are reducing distance to the poll site. And again, I'm going to guess 2 or 3 miles, right? And the second one is we need to potentially be catering to the university students, the vast majority of whom aren't even residents of the town. I don't get that. I mean, I'm all for early voting and I'm all for making it as convenient as possible. But I think if you have one central location that's open for 2 weeks, including on weekends, anybody who wants to early vote should not have any problems taking advantage of it. And I think to the point of if it's a question of throughput, I mean, you just need to make sure that you have the necessary technical equipment to process the voters. I'm concerned with just the general expense and then just the physical security that the police would need to provide, particularly if the synagogue is chosen as one of the sites. So to me, just having one central location at the town hall, if that's where you guys choose, seems to me to make sense and is fair and should be accessible to everyone in the town. I don't know why we need 3 sites, but that's my opinion.
Thank you, Representative Cook-Littman.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Tara Cook-Littman, District 2. I wasn't going to chime in, but Or Chadash, formerly Bethel, is my synagogue. It's been my home away from home my entire life, and so I felt like I just wanted to share a couple thoughts. First, I'm actually fairly neutral on whether we use it as a polling place or not. The only thing I'm not neutral on is finding the locations that are the most convenient for our town. And I will share that Or Hadash is a pretty convenient location. It has a huge room. It has a huge parking lot. It's right off Fairfield Woods Road. It's very convenient to get inside, very convenient to leave. So I appreciate the thoughts on concerns around anti-Semitism. Believe me, in my lifetime, I've never been more afraid to be a Jew. But I'll also be damned if I let things like that stop us from using synagogues and moving forward with life as usual, because then we're letting, I want to use a bad word, but I'm just going to say the haters win. And I don't want to let the haters win. And I do trust that our police and the synagogue security could handle it. So I just wanted to share that perspective. Churches, synagogues, mosques, I'd vote at any of them. And those religious institutions around the country are serving as polling places. So I'm not sure what our concern is about using them as polling places. We're not forcing people to go to services at these religious institutions. We're just providing a space. So again, I'm neutral. I'm really like, I'm not sitting here advocating, yes, it should be Or Hadash. But if we find, if Matt suggests, and Kathy agrees, this is a really convenient location, which I believe it probably is, then we would be doing our town a disservice in saying, oh, the climate is scary out there. We need extra security. Okay, so we make it work. If that is where we will get more people coming out to vote, then we use it.
Thank you. Representative Britton.
Peter Britton, District 1. I haven't heard anything about video surveillance in terms of if that would be incorporated into this, given what has recently taken place in our area here.
Old Town Hall does have security cameras. I know Fairfield University would consider installing them. Sacred Heart does have them in the room. So I'm not sure about the synagogue.
Thank you. Representative Shea.
Thank you, Chris Shea, District 2. Thank you both for your presentations, and I appreciate each of your positions. I heard, Matt, in your report that early voting this year is also going to allow for day of registrations. And I'm a little bit concerned about the logistics of that, especially if you're going to have that happening at 3 different places. I've worked the polls before and thought it to be a wonderful civic duty, and I love doing it. But it does present some problems. And in my experience, when somebody shows up to vote and they don't have, then they're not registered, or we can't find a record of their registration, it does slow things down quite a bit. And then the moderator has to interact. And I worry day of registration, voter registration at an early voting location. What's the ID requirement for that? And for example, at a university, they need to be a resident of, this is a federal election, but it's also a state election. So would they need to be a registered? My question's getting long, I'm sorry. Do they have to be a town of Fairfield resident?
So there's a couple different questions in there. First, I'll say in terms of the logistics of having voter registration as a part of the voting process, I do think that you're right, that it would extend like the length of the average service transaction, right? It's not like a typical polling place where if someone's not on the list, you need to send them away to another location. In 2020, we did have the experience of utilizing all 10 of our polling places as election day registration sites. And we trained staff at each of those 10 sites to register voters and what the criteria were for voter registration at those sites. So that did work pretty well. The utilization was less than we might have expected in that one. It was sort of peak COVID time, and the number of people who were coming in person was more minimal than we might normally expect in a presidential year. But in terms of what the requirements are, election day voter registration as distinct from, or I guess we now call it same day registration, as distinct from registering by mail, is that you must show something both with your photo and with your current residence address. And so it's a slightly higher requirement that if you recently moved from another town in Connecticut and your license still has your old town's address, you also would need to show us something with your current residence. In terms of whether students are eligible, case law, and this is nationally, says that students may declare as their domicile either the address where their family lives or the address where they are currently living during the school year. And so, students basically get to pick. We have to sort of remind them that, you can only vote in one place. And if you did apply for an absentee ballot somewhere else, then, you've sort of made that decision already. But typically I'll say we see a lot of students and a lot of parents coming through the town hall and asking for information about this stuff, particularly in presidential years. And, it's challenging enough to get them to vote once. I'll say that, if a student has voted in their family home, then they typically know that and are not trying to participate here. Normally that happens if they live in a place that's more interesting electorally, right? If I came from Pennsylvania and I'm now at college in Connecticut, maybe that's where I think my home is at the moment. And I think that that's a consideration that some people in that situation have. One other just point that sort of distinguishes Connecticut from a couple of places where this stuff is in the news, like New Hampshire, for example. Connecticut does not have any durational residence requirement. If you move in the day before the election, you can vote in that election. You don't have to have lived there for a month or 6 months or something prior to that. So that's a consideration in some places where students are voting, but is not a consideration here.
But they would have to have some form of proof that they did live here, even if it was just for a day, like a utility bill or something with.
That's true. I'll say that what we have arranged in the past, and it's worked very well for us, was to work with the administrations of the universities for them to supply us with a current of residents on the campus, and that we can use that to confirm their residence, even as they still have to show us a photo ID to register at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Woke.
Jay Woke, District 5. Hey, Matt. Hey, Kathy. Thank you both for what you're doing. It's not easy. So I want to go back to a little history of St. Pius Church and why that happened. So for the people who wasn't on the RTM at that time. So just to I'll make it quick. So my colleagues on the other side of the aisle wanted to change the St. Pius from North Stratfield School because they were saying that most of the constituents were finding it not convenient for them to vote to go to North Stratfield School, and it was more convenient for them to go to St. Pius Church. My feeling is I'm not against having it in the synagogue if that's, because it's in the room, but I've always believed that to keep church and state separate. But how do we know that the synagogue is more convenient than town hall and having it on the second floor in the conference room Because there's a lot of folks that may live on the other side of the town that find it not convenient to come to the synagogue to do early voting, rather than it's more convenient to do. I mean, I'm not quite understanding what is more, which one is actually more convenient? Do we know?
I believe what people really want is a place that's familiar to them. And I do not think that the synagogue is in an area that's convenient for a lot of people, but that's just my opinion.
So is the voting back at North Stratfield, guys, or is it still at St. Pius?
It's kind of at Burr now.
So it was changed to Burr School.
Correct, yeah. St. Pius was removed. Matt had told me there was an issue where people, didn't feel it was appropriate to vote at a religious institution. So at his request, it was removed.
So most of their request was because of church and state. They wanted it separate.
I'll actually say that we did talk about this recently, and what I said to Kathy, and I'll share with you, is that I had no concern about I'm calling him Sacred Heart instead of St. Pius, about St. Pius as a location. And when she proposed St. Pius as the location for early voting, I said that's certainly centrally located. Their concern tends to be that they have a tenant, that the Montessori school that uses the same space that we would vote in, and the tension sort of built around the tenant's needs as compared with the registrar of voters' needs in terms of administering elections there. There was a constituent complaint, and I would say a legal threat, that we resolved by changing the entrance that we used, and I thought the matter was handled respectfully to all in that regard. The concern for this body and for our office was that the statutes require you to use a polling place inside a voting district if one is available. And in that specific situation, the church grounds were outside the voting district that it was serving, which was a violation of the statutes. So certainly it was a suitable place, and we enjoyed being there, and they were good hosts. And even as they were a organization that had their own needs that we tried and sometimes struggled to meet. But it was just a matter of, are you allowed legally to use a polling place outside a district when you do have a polling place inside the district? That was the concern in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Josh Garskoff, District 5. So I have a process question. So this is going to be put on our agenda for Monday. Do we have to pick between locations that have been proposed? What are our choices here? How are we doing this?
As of this moment on the agenda, if the agenda item says that we will be voting on that there will be 2 locations. So if we just took the agenda at face value and we said, yes, we vote for 2 locations, that would leave our registrars to go back and try to work it out and agree on a location themselves. We could certainly offer our suggestions, but that is their power at this time. If I have a sense of the body that you want me to put locations on the agenda, I was going to talk to possibly our town attorney, talk to the registrars, see about that. That would be a separate agenda item. So we would vote to, let's just say we vote on having 2 locations, then we would vote on those locations. We can have an agenda item to vote on the locations if we so choose to do that. I believe we probably could have somebody, we can add it as other business with a 2/3 vote too as well, as a possibility. But as of now, the voting on the actual location is not on the agenda.
But I'm sorry. So there's 2 different events, right? There's November, which is where we're talking about how many locations, and there's August where I think we've been asked to put on the agenda.
Yeah, so
which location.
Right.
And so my question is, how do we address which location for August? Do we have to pick one that's been named by the registrars? And how do we go about, is it multiple choice? Is it A or B?
I have to look. I know in the past we've had this dilemma on our agenda. So like we had it, or I think we have to vote on it often when it's out of district. Is that right? So like we voted on Stratfield School because there's no district for voting locations. So we have to vote on it. So it might be to the point where I choose something and put it on the agenda and someone makes an amendment, but I will have to look into that. But yeah, so I might randomly pick the moon and then we can discuss it.
Thanks.
I'll say it's my understanding that you're not limited to what we've proposed, but there's also not, we've been beating the drum to identify spots. So if you have any great ideas, share them before then.
Representative Ludwig-Sack.
Christine Ludwig-Sack, District 8. I'll be quick. Just wanted to clarify, I think back in March, the state, were we required, do we have 4 days where we had early voting practice?
Correct.
Where was that location?
That was Old Town Hall, second floor conference room.
Okay. Okay, yeah, and I guess I do very much appreciate the effort to make voting as accessible. I think it's very, very important, but I do feel that having the additional 14 days or 120 hours does that very, very good for this kind of first time out, seeing how early voting goes. I don't know if we necessarily need to expand that to the 3 different sites. I think that one site gives 120 additional hours as is. But I do think that you guys both made some very good points and gave us a lot of food for thought. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. I just want to make a recommendation that we don't vote on the November locations next week and give the registrars time once we decide on the number to find some alternatives, since obviously there's some dispute as to what's a good choice. So that's all I had to say. Bye.
I appreciate that, Representative McCabe. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I do have 2 things. One, I heard you mention Jennings for the location of the primary. And can you tell me, I think that was you, Mr. Wagner, can you tell me why Jennings would be okay to use during the summer or during the primary, but it's not okay to use during the school year?
The schools are not willing to make the spaces available to us during school sessions. So we would be voting during many hours when school would typically be in class.
Is there any Parks and Rec camp there during the summer?
I know that it is available for us to reserve. I am not certain whether there's Parks and Recreation there, but the space is available for us.
So you're not sure what other activities are going on at Jennings during the summer?
Correct. I do know that Woods is not available to us due to planned renovations.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is, and not to complicate things anymore, but is there, if we decided, do all 3 locations have to run all days? So you can't say we need a weekend surge and have 2 extra locations on a weekend surge.
No, the voting has to be at the same location the whole time. And I want to add that each night, those ballots, if it's at a different location, has to be transported back to Old Town Hall, to our vault each night. And if you're running ballots from 3 different locations, 2 different locations, it's just easier. It just seems chaotic, and it just seems like, not a good idea to me.
So you're, the holdings for all those are at Old Town Hall, and where you're proposing the vote is Town Hall?
I'm proposing Old Town Hall,
Okay.
second floor conference room.
I have to say, actually, as a member of the RTM for 7 years, I still cannot get the 2 buildings straight. And I get very confused. I'm like, I have no idea where I'm going. Like every time I walk in there, I get so lost. So Old Town Hall is a little bit confusing to me, and driving across town does make me a little nervous, but I won't weigh any of that into my decision. Any other questions or comments? I thank you guys for this engagement. Thank you, and we'll talk. I'm sure we'll be talking.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And before we adjourn, don't think we're adjourning. We're going back to my favorite item, rules to regulate. I just wanted to say that I put this item on the agenda to form a committee for the rules to regulate. It's something that I've been wanting to do for some time. We talk about dates. Our rules to regulate is our governing document. Even just during this meeting, I had people turn to me and say, it's almost 11 o'clock. Do we have to call the meeting? Do we have to stop voting? You know, it's not really that clear in here, but it's not a voting meeting. So there's lots of ambiguous, you know, things that aren't clear in here, lots of things that have changed over time, you know, lots of different interpretations and lots of ways that we've changed with technology and everything. So I think we deserve an update. Rules to Regulate was formed in 1997 by the RTM. This does not make sense. My RTM book says, yeah, but that's funny because mine's different. Yeah, but anyhow, it was formed according to Ms. Desma's in 87. Mine was adopted by the RTM in 97. So that's a typo. And then it was amended in 93, 99, and 07. So the last time that the rules to regulate has been amended is in 2007. I think we're due for it. If we vote to form a committee, the SLMC will populate that committee with, according to our current rules to regulate, that committee would be formed of 5 members, 3 from the majority body and 2 from the minority body. So if you're interested and this goes through and you want to be on that committee, you know, let your majority or minority leaders know so that they can populate you onto those committees. Any questions, Representative Carson?
Sorry, I'm so tired. Laura Carson, I think D4. I don't know anymore. We're gonna vote on this item then next week?
Yes, next week, we're going to vote on forming the rules, a committee for the rules to regulate, just like we formed the Energy Committee, just like we formed Senior Disabled Tax Relief every year. We'll be voting on forming this committee to look at the rules to regulate. I want to say that as moderator, I hope that the members on the committee, you know, don't work in a little box, that they reach out to all of us, many past members, many, you know, members in the community to get input because we all interpret it differently. And I think that even if you're not on the committee, that I'm hoping that the members will reach out to everyone. Representative Estrada.
Yeah, just a quick question. Did you have like a set of like draft recommended changes, or is it literally starting from scratch?
Start from scratch. And I did at the beginning of the term talk to minority leaders, Representative Steele, who's not here, and I know he was in favor of looking at this as well. So, yep. Any other questions regarding this? Okay, we're going to break up into committees. Don't forget to call in and record. I think we have, unfortunately, many that do not have a quorum. So looks like we'll be voting no consent calendar next week, unfortunately. Well, you know, still meet up in your committees and, you know, go from there. Sorry.